Chapter 2450. I never thought that I would actually attract the attention of a Grand Exalt. Jianqin felt powerless before a Grand Exalt. The old master of the sword spirits was a terrifying existence who had reached Grand Exalt. He deeply understood just how heaven-defying an expert like that was. It was impossible for him to escape before someone like that. All of his abilities, including the Inata Tower, were child's play before a Grand Exalt. As a matter of fact, even if he fused the twin swords again, regardless of the price, and unleashed the chaotic might again, he would not be able to harm a Grand Exalt at all. After all, he did not possess the same level of cultivation as the old master of the twin swords. The twin swords were no longer in perfect condition, so their power would obviously be affected if he fused them. Moreover, even if he wanted to fuse the twin swords now, he did not possess the ability to do so. This was because his body, his blood, and all of his realms and powers had been completely sealed. The only thing that could still move was his thoughts. However, what Jianqin failed to notice was that Keia's eyes had suddenly become pitch black. This darkness was vast and boundless. It was like the void of the universe without any starlight. It was abnormally deep. It seemed like Keia's eyes were nurturing an endless, dark space. In the deepest part of the dark void, a pair of eyes flashed. The gaze was extraordinarily cold without any emotions. It was cold and emotionless, as if it viewed all life as ants. It arrived from afar through the endless darkness. Before Jianqin, the blurry figure condensed from the sea of blood suddenly pulsed. A real gaze seemed to appear silently in the figure. It was also cold and emotionless, surging with a murderous aura that viewed everyone as trash. The gaze that no one could sense within the blood-red figure directly condensed on Keia. The gaze from the depths of Keia's eyes was extremely cold. It met the blood-tier Grand Exalt's gaze. The blood-tier Grand Exalt's eyes suddenly narrowed when he saw the gaze in the depths of Keia's eyes. He glanced at Keia deeply before turning around and leaving without saying anything. At that moment, the blood-red figure that the blood-tier Grand Exalt had condensed before Jianqin vanished without a trace. The boundless sea of blood that shrouded the entire barren state disappeared along with it. The blood-tier Grand Exalt had already left. Immediately, the surroundings cleared up once more. Origin energy began to flow once more, and the laws of the world began to operate once more. The blood-tier Grand Exalt's influence and interference on the desolate plane had completely vanished, allowing the plane to return to normal. Jianqin stared blankly at the blood-red figure that had disappeared in front of him. He did not understand what was going on. He was certain that the sword spirits on him had been exposed to the Grand Exalt. Logically speaking, the Azulite twin swords had caused so many casualties to the saint's world in the past. He had inherited the twin swords and cultivated the profound sword qi created by the previous master of the twin swords. He had basically become the successor of the previous master of the twin swords, so it was impossible for a Grand Exalt to spare him. Yet the blood-tier Grand Exalt had suddenly left. Jianqin found this to be very strange, but no matter how he tried to think about it, he was still puzzled. However, it was clearly not the time to consider this right now. No matter why the blood-tier Grand Exalt had suddenly left, escaping was his priority right now. Let's go! Jianqin immediately pulled Keia with him and shot off with lightning speed. On the other side, all the primordial realm experts remained fearful. Their faces were abnormally pale as they stood there blankly. They had no idea what to do. Although the blood-tier Grand Exalt had already left, his arrival made all the peak experts understand that the mysterious cavern definitely had something to do with the blood-tier Grand Exalt. Even the fragments of the ancient great apes that they had obtained might have been personally bestowed by the blood-tier Grand Exalt. However, they had actually stolen the Grand Exalt's possessions. This made all of them panic and unease. Even Tu San, who came from the Heaven-Splitting clan, was unsettled. They even had no idea whether they should return the remains of Gusta that they had already stolen and that lay quietly in their space rings. They did not dare to touch the possessions of Grand Exalts. At that moment, everyone was filled with panic and unease. No one cared about Jianqin anymore. To another side, Kea and Jianqin flew off. At this moment, Kea suddenly looked at Jianqin and asked, "Jianqin, how do we leave the desolate plain?" Jianqin frowned when he heard that. After a moment of thought, he said, "All the teleportation formations on the desolate plain have been sealed up, so we can't use them to leave. We can't go to outer space either. In the vast cosmos, we'll become a bigger target instead. After all, the senses of the souls of the peak experts can reach an extremely terrifying distance. As a result, I believe the best method right now is to use the same trick as before and enter a spatial crack. We'll use the toughness of the Inata Tower to move through it. Even peak experts will be limited in a spatial crack. They won't be able to move as fast as the Azure Pun King, so it'll be very difficult for them to catch up to us." Jianqin made up his mind very quickly. He did not want to rely on the God Clan or the martial soul lineage, so entering a spatial crack was the best method he could think of right now. Afterwards, Jianqin and Kea traveled a certain distance before drawing the 9-star sort of heavenly ways. They wanted to cut through space, go to the Violet Wind Empire in the southern region. The interplanar teleportation formation in the royal capital can take you away. At this moment, an obscure voice rang out in Jianqin's head. Jianqin's eyes narrowed when he heard the voice. He was familiar with the voice. It came from the celestial sword saint. "Let's go to the southern region." Jianqin changed his plans. He stowed the 9-star sword of heavenly ways away and immediately hurried off to the southern region with Kea. He was currently in the central region of the desolate plain. Although there was an extremely great distance between the central region and the southern region, there were many interplanar teleportation formations in the central region. The interplanar teleportation formations could only be used in the 5 regions of the desolate plain. They could not leave the desolate plain, so they were not sealed up like the interplanar teleportation formations. Jianqin and Kea arrived in a bustling city nearby. They directly used the interplanar teleportation formation in the city and left the desolate plain. When they appeared again, they had already arrived in the southern region, in the royal capital of the Violet Wind Empire. Jianqin immediately looked at the interplanar teleportation formation nearby. He saw that the teleportation formation in the royal capital was enveloped by a layer of formations, preventing anyone from entering. There were quite a few soldiers standing guard around the teleportation formation. The most conspicuous of them all was a slovenly old man with messy hair and old clothes. He was currently lying on a rattan chair, lazily. Jianqin could tell with a single glance that the old man was an infinite prime. Chapter 2451. Jianqin naturally discovered that the unkempt old man was looking at him, but he was in no mood to care about anything else right now. He became extremely stern. This was because he could see with a single glance that the teleportation formation in the imperial capital of the Violet Wind Empire was also sealed off. It was enveloped by a formation. The light in Jianqin's eyes flickered as he observed the surroundings. There were several interplane teleportation formations in the imperial capital of the Violet Wind Empire, but the only one that could transport people between planes was the one the unkempt old man stood guard over. The Celestial Sword Saint said that the interplane teleportation formation in the imperial capital can take me away. Is it this one? In the end, Jianqin still stared at the teleportation formation up ahead. After a moment of hesitation, he approached it slowly. "Stop! This is a forbidden area. No one is allowed to approach." Before Jianqin could approach, the soldiers of the Violet Wind Empire stopped Jianqin and Kea. "Move aside." The unkempt old man walked over lazily and dismissed the surrounding soldiers. He looked at Jianqin and Kea with interest. "What are you 2 kids trying to do?" asked the unkempt old man. His hair was disheveled, and he seemed like a beggar. He did not possess the bearing of a primordial realm expert at all. Senior, we want to use the interplane teleportation formation. May I ask if you can make it easy for us? Jianqin clasped his fist. In reality, anyone who wanted to use the interplane teleportation formation would be heavily suspected during this sensitive period. He directly told the unkempt old man because he trusted the Celestial Sword Saint. Who was the Celestial Sword Saint? He was a terrifying existence that even the heaven-splitting ancestor did not fear. Since he said that the teleportation formation in the Violet Wind Empire could take him away, it definitely could. However, Jianqin was not certain whether the Celestial Sword Saint was referring to the one before him or not. But now he didn't have the time to search for the second teleportation array that could possibly exist. Moreover, when he said that, he had already prepared for the worst. Once the situation went wrong, he would immediately tear open space and take Kea into the spatial crack. Now that he had reached the Sword Immortal realm, his strength had skyrocketed. He was able to unleash the power of the 9-star Sword of Heavenly Ways even more. Cutting through space was no longer too difficult for him. You want to use the teleportation matrix to leave the barren state? The unkempt old man clearly became stunned when he heard Jianqin's words. He looked at Jianqin strangely and felt rather surprised. He thought to himself, this kid should know that all teleportation formations across the desolate plain have been sealed off, yet he still came here. Does he know that I can let him leave? Or is this just a coincidence? But this kid sure is a troublemaker. Wherever he is, there's no peace. He went to the Tsang Poseidon Palace, and half of the divine king of the Poseidon Palace died. He came to the barren state and instead caused a mess. Even the blood tier Grand Exalt came out because of him. If he continues like this, when will the barren state find peace? Since he wants to leave, I'll let him leave. As long as he leaves, the barren state will find peace. When he thought up to there, the unkempt old man immediately smiled maliciously. He stared at Jianqin strangely and sniggered. It's not like you can't use teleportation formations across planes. It's just that these are special times, so the price will naturally be higher than usual. Kid, I just don't know if you can afford it. Jianqin immediately let out a sigh of relief when he heard that the teleportation formation could be used. However, he did not let down his guard at all. He said, if that's the case, then name a price. The unkempt old man slowly extended his hand and smiled. 505 colored divine crystals for one person. It'll be 1,000 5-colored divine crystals for the two of you. Jianqin frowned when he heard that. 500 5-colored divine crystals for one person was over 10 times more expensive than usual. However, the matter at hand was to leave the barren state and get away from this dangerous place. As a result, Jianqin could not be bothered with the wealth right now. He just happened to have 1,000 5-colored divine crystals in his space ring. He had obtained all of them from the Tsang Poseidon Palace in the past. Not bad, not bad. I couldn't tell that you're pretty rich, kid. You can actually take out 1,000 5-colored divine crystals. Go on. The unkempt old man played around with the space ring that Jianqin had passed to him casually before waving his hand at the teleportation formation behind him. There were no pulses of energy at all, nor was there any pressure at all. However, the unkempt old man's casual wave actually managed to create a crack in the powerful formation that sealed off the teleportation formation. It was just large enough for the two of them to pass through. Jianqin did not see through the secrets behind it. He only thought that the unkempt old man had used a special secret technique to open the seal of the formation. He secretly sensed for a moment. After confirming that there was no danger, he pulled Kea with him and quickly made his way to the teleportation formation. Very soon, the teleportation formation activated. Jianqin and Kea vanished under the power of the teleportation formation with a powerful flash of white light. However, the moment they vanished, the unkempt old man seemed to sense something. A strange light immediately filled his eyes as he stared at the empty teleportation formation with interest. He sighed inside. Gusta's fleshly core is actually on that kid as well. It's impossible for him not to sense the presence of the fleshly core when the blood tier Grand Exalts will descended earlier, but he didn't take it away. The unkempt old man's eyes suddenly became extremely deep. He murmured to himself, "Looks like this kid is even more complicated than I imagined him to be. It's just a pity that I can't peer into anything about him. Strange, truly strange, within a certain manner in the central region of the desolate plain. Aladona, let's go. Our god clan really can't help with Gentian at all." The hall elder of the god clan, Tyne, sighed softly and said powerlessly, "Elder, is there nothing else we can do?" To the side, Aladona refused to give up. She wanted to try one last time. Tyne sighed gently. "Gentian is far too reckless. You have no idea just how much trouble he's caused. He destroyed the blood tier Grand Exalt's arrangements and drew out the blood tier Grand Exalt. You can imagine just how severe Gentian's trouble is to be able to alarm the blood tier Grand Exalt personally. The blood tier Grand Exalt won't let him go." Tyne stared in the direction of the cave deeply and continued, "Perhaps Gentian has already been taken away by the blood tier Grand Exalt. Now that he's in the hands of a Grand Exalt, even the first majesty of the heavenly palace of Bishing won't be able to save him. P.S. Today is New Year's Day, the first day of 2018. Shaya wishes everyone a happy New Year's Day. Eat well, drink well, have fun, and welcome the arrival of the new year with a new attitude." Chapter 2452. After confirming that there was nothing she could do, the hall elder of the god clan, Tyne, charged into outer space with Aladona and left the desolate plain. None of the grand primes on the vast desolate plain knew that Gentian had already left the desolate plain silently. He had left through a teleportation formation right under their noses. As for the teleportation formation guarded by the unkempt old man, none of the upper echelon of the desolate plain, including the Violet Wind Empire, sensed anything at all. Even the soldiers who guarded the teleportation formation were the same. This was because all the soldiers were in a daze when the unkempt old man made a deal with Gentian until Gentian left the desolate plain. Only when Gentian left and the teleportation formation returned to normal did they return to their senses. In the huge central region of the desolate plain, many peak experts hovered above the deep crater. All of them felt heavy inside. They had no idea what to do with the flesh and blood they had collected. "I've collected quite a lot of the ancient, great ape's flesh and blood. Since I have no idea what to do with it, I might as well take it all back to Master and let him decide," thought Tusan. Tusan thought in the crowd. As soon as he thought about how he had the support of the heaven-splitting ancestor, who was only a step away from becoming a Grand Exalt, he became much calmer. In his opinion, the culprit behind the destruction of the blood tier Grand Exalt's arrangements was Gentian. He had only participated in the fight for a portion of the flesh and blood at most. Even if the blood tier Grand Exalt decided to pursue the matter, he would not be held responsible. With his master's identity and status, all he needed to do was negotiate with the blood tier Grand Exalt, and it should not be difficult to resolve the matter. The blood tier Grand Exalt left soon after arriving. He definitely knows that the person who destroyed his arrangements is Gentian. It's difficult for us to find Gentian, but before the blood tier Grand Exalt, he can't hide no matter how skilled he is, thought Tusan. The light in Tusan's eyes flickered for a while before he gave up on searching for Gentian. He returned to the heaven-splitting clan. He had to report everything that had happened on the desolate plain to the heaven-splitting ancestor. He also had to hand over the flesh and blood that he did not know what to do with immediately to his master, on the lone heaven plain of the saints' world. The heavenly king of azure brilliance one of the four renowned heavenly kings of the Lone Heaven Plain, currently sat on the peak of the Azure Brilliance Mountain. At that moment, he had already transformed into his human form. He wore an azure gown and had a gloomy expression on his face. Within his ice-cold eyes, traces of cold light shot out. At this moment, the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance coughed gently. As he coughed, blood immediately spurted out from his throat. His already pale face became even paler. "Celestial Sword Saint, I'll pay you back sooner or later. I'll pay you back 1,000 times over. You better not let me find an opportunity." The heavenly king of Azure Brilliance bellowed out as killing intent surged in his eyes. It was almost tangible. His hatred and killing intent towards the Celestial Sword Saint had reached a limit. "Heavenly King, we've already found Jianshin's origins." At this moment, a voice rang out from below the Azure Brilliance Mountain. It was filled with respect. The heavenly king of Azure Brilliance suddenly vanished from the top of the mountain. He appeared beside a burly, middle-aged man like he had teleported. His eyes flickered with a bloodthirsty light as he said, "Coldly, speak!" "Yes, heavenly king." The burly man lowered his head deeply and said politely, "According to my investigations, we've already confirmed that Jianshin comes from the Cloud Plain. He established a clan in a remote region of the southern region called the Tianyuan family. The Cloud Plain, the Tianyuan family." The heavenly king of Azure Brilliance chuckled deeply. He said with killing intent, "Very good, very good. We've finally found your origins. I'll go wipe out the Tianyuan family right now." "Heavenly king, the Tianyuan family is only a small clan that can't be seen in public. There's no need for the heavenly king to personally take care of something so trivial. Just leave it to us." The burly man smiled as he tried to curry favor. "No." The heavenly king of Azure Brilliance bellowed out, "I want to personally take care of the Tianyuan family." The Azure Pung King was renowned for his pettiness in the saints' world. He would definitely seek revenge. As long as someone offended him, no matter how weak they were, they would not be able to avoid his revenge. Moreover, he had suffered greatly many times in the past few years when he hunted down Jianshin. As a result, his killing intent towards Jianshin became even more intense. Even the Tianyuan family behind Jianshin had become a target for him to destroy. With a flash of azure light, the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance vanished. He had charged out of the Lone Heaven Plain with indescribable speed, heading towards the Cloud Plain. A middle-aged man who seemed to be in his 40s sat with another middle-aged man within a majestic divine hall of the Taoist sect of divine sound on the Skyfire Plain. Both of them radiated with powerful presences. The two of them were two of the four ancestors of the Taoist sect of divine sound, Lian Qi and Guna. They were both chaotic primes. Below Lian Qi and Guna, there was a man and a woman standing side by side. They were slightly bowing and had respectful looks on their faces. Among them, the woman was dressed in a purple robe. She was a peerless beauty, and her pair of pitch-black eyes seemed to contain some kind of magic, containing the power to attract souls. When one looked into her eyes, it was as if one's soul would be sucked in. The woman in violet was Shangguan Mu, the young man beside Shangguan Mu, was the prodigy that the Taoist sect of divine sound took the most pride in, Jun Kong. Jun Kong was still extremely handsome and graceful. He was a rare handsome man in the Taoist sect of divine sound, where countless female disciples became infatuated with him. However, his complexion was abnormally pale, and he seemed to be in a weak state. Back in the Azure Poseidon Palace, Jun Kong had been ravaged by Ming Dong. He had been beaten to a pulp, and his wounds were so severe that his body had almost been destroyed. However, as Jun Kong possessed quite a high status in the Taoist sect of divine sound, his master, one of the four ancestors of the Taoist sect of divine sound, Lian Qi, did everything he could to heal him. Jun Kong only managed to recover after using many healing pills and heavenly resources. However, he had only recovered to 80%. The most unexpected thing was that after experiencing the setback in the Neptunian Divine Palace, Jun Kong seemed to have gone through a cycle of life and death. After the great ups and downs, he instead underwent a huge transformation. Vaguely, he seemed to possess the concept of life and death. The concept of life and death was not a law of the world. Instead, it was one of the three supreme realms recorded in the Taoist sect of divine sound. The three supreme realms had been created by the peak experts of the Taoist sect of divine sound, the third ancestor, during their most glorious period. They were the heart of the demonic and divine, the heart of life and death, and the heart of all things. After the third ancestor, no one else had been able to comprehend these three great wills. Now that Jun Kong had experienced such great ups and downs, his mental fortitude had changed. He seemed to be about to comprehend one of the three intents, the heart of life and death. As a result, the four ancestors of the Taoist sect of divine sound treated him with great importance, basically protecting him like a treasure. Now that the artifact spirit of the zither of the demonic cry is complete, you must have obtained the true legacy of the two tunes of the demonic and divine. However, just the legacy is nowhere near enough if you want to grasp the two tunes of the demonic and divine that the third ancestor created in the past. You need to comprehend the concept of the demonic and divine as well as comprehend the heart of the demonic and divine. Only then can you truly unleash the power of the two tunes of the demonic and divine. Jun Kong, your concept of life and death has only reached the threshold right now. You're still a little away from truly grasping it. However, whether it's the heart of the demonic and divine or the heart of life and death, they're all three supreme concepts created by the third ancestor. As a result, we've decided to send the two of you to where the third ancestor cultivated in the past, under the influence of the third ancestor's will. Some incomplete concepts have been left behind. We hope that cultivating there will be beneficial to your comprehension of concepts. The two of you are the future of our Taoist sect of divine sound. Whether our Taoist sect of divine sound can still stand at the apex of the saints' world and become the greatest organization on the Skyfar plane will depend on the two of you. One of the four ancestors of the Taoist sect of divine sound, Lian Qi, said to Shangguan Mu-Er and Jun Kong sternly. Chapter 2453. Lian Qi, you suggested for Jun Kong and Mu-Er to enter where the third ancestor used to cultivate in the past, because you wanted to bring them together, right? One of the four ancestors of the Taoist sect of divine sound, Guna, said slowly after Shangguan Mu-Er and Jun Kong had left. Lian Qi nodded and said nothing. After a moment of hesitation, Guna continued, "But you know about Mu-Er's situation as well. She has a husband, and he's still alive." Lian Qi sighed gently when he heard that. He said, "You're talking about Jianqin, right? I've heard about Jianqin recently as well. He's caused quite the disturbance on the desolate plain. From the rumors, Jianqin is indeed extremely outstanding." Before Jun Kong has comprehended the concept of life and death, he definitely won't be able to match up to Jianqin. However, Jianqin is just too good at causing trouble. Look at him. He's just a measly divine king, yet he's turned the desolate plain into such a mess. Just how much trouble has he caused? Just how many peak experts has he offended? If Mu-Er continues to have a relationship with him, it won't be a good thing for her. She'll even be dragged into it. Even our Taoist sect of divine sound will be dragged into it. Lian Qi paused. He looked at Guna deeply and continued, Mu-Er has inherited the third ancestor's legacy. I don't need to go into the significance of her existence to our Taoist sect of divine sound. As a result, we need to protect Mu-Er's growth. Right now, Mu-Er is facing potential danger, which is Jianqin. As a result, if it's possible, we have to separate Mu-Er from Jianqin. Moreover, you can see how infatuated Jun Kong is with Mu-Er. If Jun Kong can become one with Mu-Er, his mind will be complete, and it'll be of great help to his comprehension of the concept of life and death. Otherwise, it might cause Jun Kong's mind to collapse, which would destroy him. I'm not just trying to get Mu, or to cut ties with Jianqin so that she won't be implicated by him. At the same time, I'm trying to create Jun Kong. Gu Na sighed gently when she heard Lian Qi's words. She slowly made her way out of the divine hall and looked at the clouds below. She sighed. I think it'll be very difficult. I can tell from Mu's eyes that she doesn't have any good feelings towards Jun Kong. Even if there was, it was only due to the fact that he was her senior brother. Moreover, this senior brother relationship is as light as water. Lian Qi walked behind Guna and hugged her from behind. He looked gentle and said, Back then, you didn't like me either, but in the end we ended up together. Who can really say for sure what will happen in the future? Ever since the Tian Empire launched a war to unify the Cloud Plain, the Cloud Plain had been in constant turmoil. War constantly broke out, and many cultivators would die from the flames of war every year. Although the Tian Empire had been removed from the Cloud Plain, the 4 ancient organizations that had allied with the Tian Empire in the past were not affected. After the Tian Empire was destroyed, the 4 ancient organizations swallowed up the remaining forces of the Tian Empire and formed the 4 Symbols Alliance. They occupied the southern region of the Cloud Plain and formed an alliance with the southern region as their foundation. They entered a long-term conflict with the Righteous Alliance led by the Heavens Link Peak. In the past few years, the 4 Symbols Alliance and the Righteous Alliance had clashed many times. The peak experts of both sides fought time and time again in outer space. Although the Righteous Alliance, led by the Heavens Link Peak, had more peak experts than the 4 Symbols Alliance, the Righteous Alliance was too selfish. However, due to the selfishness of the peak experts of the Righteous Alliance, none of them were willing to pay too great of a price. They did not dare to take the risk of being injured or even killed. As a result, they were unable to completely wipe out the 4 Symbols Alliance. As a result, the 4 Symbols Alliance and the Righteous Alliance entered a long-term stalemate. Moreover, as time went on, the Righteous Alliance, led by the Heavens Link Peak, seemed to realize that completely destroying the 4 Symbols Alliance would not be an easy matter. As a result, the decision-makers of the Righteous Alliance gradually recognized the 4 Symbols Alliance's existence. The number of conflicts between peak experts gradually decreased. In particular, a year ago, a chaotic prime from the 4 Symbols Alliance successfully broke through after over 1 million years at the 9th heavenly layer of chaotic prime, reaching Grand Prime. The peak powers of the 2 alliances seemed to reach an agreement with great tacit understanding. They stopped fighting each other. Of course, this truce was only between the peak powers of the 2 great alliances. The people below fought openly and covertly, and all kinds of small conflicts never stopped. Of course, the Pingtian Empire that had only become an ancient empire recently became an exception when the entire Cloud Plain was shaken up. Now, the entire Pingtian Empire was enveloped by a powerful formation. As the formation operated, it absorbed energy from the surroundings and formed a transparent barrier. It had become the protector of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. The current southern region of the Cloud Plain had completely fallen under the 4 Symbols Alliance's control. The former ruler of the southern region, the Blood Sun Empire, had become a subsidiary of the 4 Symbols Alliance long ago. The divine kingdom of Pingtian had become the only exception. All of this was because the divine kingdom of Pingtian possessed a 9th heavenly layer chaotic prime. Any 9th heavenly layer chaotic prime was enough to attract the attention of the 4 Symbols Alliance and the Righteous Alliance, let alone the person in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Her battle prowess was unparalleled. It's time for the Pingtian Empire to use force. On this day, an old voice rang out from a majestic divine hall in the headquarters of the 4 Symbols Alliance in the southern region of the Cloud Plain. Inside the divine hall, 5 figures sat cross-legged. They were of different ages and appearances, but their bearings were filled with majesty. The 5 of them were the peak forces of the current Four Symbols Alliance. The Divine King of the Pingtian Empire is nothing to worry about. What's important is that Ming Xie of unknown origins. He's very powerful. None of the chaotic primes in our Four Symbols Alliance are his opponent. They've all been defeated by him. Ming Xie is the only obstacle to reclaiming the Pingtian Empire. The entire southern region needs to fall under our Four Symbols Alliance's complete control. We can't allow any organizations that don't belong to us to exist. Before, we had to deal with the Righteous Alliance, so we didn't have the time or energy to pay attention to the Pingtian Empire. Now that we're free, we need to deal with the Pingtian Empire. That's right. The Pingtian Empire needs to fall under our control, and Ming Xie needs to join our Four Symbols Alliance to expand our strength. If they don't yield, they'll be destroyed. We can't allow a malignant tumor to exist. The 5 experts of the Four Symbols Alliance all expressed their determination to reclaim the Pingtian Empire. This time I'll personally take action. At this moment, a burly, middle-aged man said. His voice was deep and filled with bloodthirsty cruelty. The middle-aged man was called Zhang Hu. He was an expert from the Four Symbols Alliance who had only broken through to Grand Prime a year ago. His breakthrough solidified the Four Symbols Alliance's position. Before long, Zhang Hu hurried to the Pingtian Empire aggressively with a group of experts from the Four Symbols Alliance. He was prepared to destroy the Pingtian Empire if they refused to submit. Chapter 2454. A huge barrier hung high in the air of the Pingtian Empire, forming a semicircular barrier that enveloped the entire empire. Above the barrier, a huge amount of origin energy gathered, forming an invisible vortex that was absorbed by the barrier, continuously providing energy to the barrier. The defenses of the barrier were extremely great. It could block several attacks from 9th heavenly layer chaotic primes without being destroyed. It was so great that it was even comparable to the protective formations of the past rulers of the southern region, the Blood Sun Empire. However, such a powerful defense could only rank second in the current Pingtian Empire. The formation that ranked first, which could truly be regarded as the strongest, was the one that protected one of the 36 provinces of the Pingtian Empire, the Tianyuan family in the Dong'an province. The protective formation of the Tianyuan family was cast down by the divine general of the heavenly palace of Bixing, Ming Xie, under the 9th Majesty's request. It could both attack and defend. Even if 9th heavenly layer chaotic primes personally came, they would not be able to gain any advantages against a formation like that. This Ming Xie is capable. He's actually able to cast down such a powerful formation. The amount of materials required to set up a formation of this level is not something that an ordinary expert can afford. Zhang, who of the Four Symbols Alliance, arrived with a group of experts outside the protective formation of the Pingtian Empire. He hovered above the barrier as he stared in the direction of the Tianyuan family and commented. Whether the Pingtian Empire would yield to the Four Symbols Alliance depended on the Tianyuan family in the Dong'an province. What are you people of the Four Symbols Alliance doing here? Zhang Hu and the others had just arrived when a middle-aged man wearing white clothes, with a gentle and weak face and a somewhat scholarly aura, appeared without a sound. Even though Zhang Hu had already become a Grand Prime, reaching a whole new level, the middle-aged man showed no fear at all. He directly stepped out of the barrier of the Pingtian Empire and appeared outside. The middle-aged man was the divine general who had always been by Mingdong's side. He was referred to as Uncle Ming by Mingdong. Ming Xie, you should know why I've come. Our Four Symbols Alliance has run out of patience. I'll give you one last chance. Are you going to yield or be destroyed? Zhang, whose gaze was piercing, he did not beat around the bush, directly stating his intentions. Ming Xie did not become angered. He said calmly, "Isn't it fine for your Four Symbols Alliance to remain the same? Why do you insist on interfering with the matters of the Tianyuan family? In other words, you don't plan on yielding." Zhang, whose face gradually sank, The Tianyuan family will not yield to any side. Moreover, neither your Four Symbols Alliance nor Righteous Alliance has the right or ability to make the Tianyuan family yield. Uncle Ming-Xie said seriously. He did not hide his disdain towards the Four Symbols Alliance. Although the Tianyuan family was founded by Jianqin, the ninth majesty of the heavenly palace of Bixing had already treated this place as her home. Making the Tianyuan family yield was equivalent to making the ninth majesty yield, let alone the puny Four Symbols Alliance on the cloud plane. Even with the entire Saints world in perspective, no organization had the right to make the ninth majesty yield. Since you won't yield, there's no need for either the Pingtian Empire or the Tianyuan family to continue existing. Zhang, whose voice deepened, a powerful killing intent radiated from his body, enveloping Ming-Xie in an overwhelming manner. Immediately, the space around Ming-Xie began to crackle. The killing intent from Zhang, who was so powerful that it caused the space around Ming-Xie to crack. At the same time, the experts of the Four Symbols Alliance who had come with Zhang, who all surged with presences. Killing intent surged. All of them were prepared. They were only waiting for Zhang, whose order. They would strike with lightning speed and destroy the Pingtian Empire. Do it. Destroy the Pingtian Empire and the Tianyuan family. At this moment, Zhang Hu called out. The laws of grand primes descended, and the origin energy in the surroundings surged wildly. Ming-Xie became stern, but that was all. He did not feel any fear towards Zhang Hu, who had just broken through to Grand Prime. The battle between the two of them could erupt at any moment. However, at this very moment, a pressure that was many times more terrifying than Zhang Hu suddenly descended. At this moment, the sky above the southern region of the cloud plain suddenly darkened. The starlight faded away, and the sun vanished. It was filled with dazzling azure light. The appearance of the pressure caused Zhang Hu's face to suddenly change. He immediately stopped his thoughts of attacking Ming-Xie and stared at the sky in shock. The experts from the Four Symbols Alliance, who had come with Zhang Hu, paled in fright from the appearance of the pressure. They all gazed at the sky in fear and unease. A huge azure punk silently arrived outside the cloud plane. It was as colossal as a planet blotting out the sky. Its azure eyes flickered with cold light as it stared at the cloud plane from outer space. The heavenly king of azure brilliance. It's the heavenly king of azure brilliance. Why has he come to the cloud plane? Zhang, who immediately recognized him, and his face changed drastically. The heavenly king of azure brilliance was renowned in the Saints world. He was known for being difficult to deal with. Across the entire Saints world, there were very few peak experts who dared to offend him. Yet now, the heavenly king of azure brilliance had come to the cloud plane, which made Zhang Hu very uneasy. The southern region of the cloud plane was the territory of their Four Symbols Alliance. At the same time, the four peak experts all arrived outside the Divine Hall in the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance in the southern region of the cloud plane. They stared at the colossal figure that blotted out the sun in the sky. All of them became extremely stern. All the peak experts of the Righteous Alliance gathered on the heavens' link peak. They also stared at the huge demonic figure in the sky sternly. The light in their eyes flickered as they felt uneasy. It's the heavenly king of azure brilliance. Why has he come to our desolate plain? Don't tell me he's been invited by the remnants of the Tian Empire to deal with us. If that's really the case, all of us won't be able to withstand a single blow. The heavenly king of azure brilliance is not someone the heavenless demon Exalt can compare to. Impossible. How proud is the heavenly king of azure brilliance? How can the Righteous Alliance invite him over with their measly heritage? The top powerhouses of the Righteous Alliance were in heated discussion. Their hearts were heavy. The demonic shadow that covered the sky had cast a shadow over their hearts. At this moment, a huge claw tore through the clouds. It was even larger than a mountain. It was powerful and flickered with a chilling light as it ripped through space. crushing down on the Pingtian Empire below. The huge claw grew larger and larger, filling up the sky. The entire territory of the Pingtian Empire was enveloped by the claw. The heavenly king of azure brilliance actually wants to destroy the Pingtian Empire. Retreat! Zhang, who stared at the target of the claw from the boundary of the Pingtian Empire and was immediately stunned. The heavenly king of azure brilliance has actually come for the Pingtian Empire? The peak experts gathered on the Heavens Link peak were greatly surprised as well. They were naturally familiar with the Pingtian Empire, the only empire not under the rule of the Four Symbols Alliance in the southern region. However, they just could not understand how the Pingtian Empire had provoked a peak expert like the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance. Chapter 2455. Azure King, stop! In the southern region of the Cloud Plain, a deafening roar resounded through the sky. Ming Xie's aura was monstrous as he furiously charged into the sky. His energy surged like a tsunami as the power of laws revolved around him. Ming Xie showed no fear at all before the infamous Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance. He used a god-tier battle skill and struck out decisively. Immediately, the might of the world surged as Ming Xie struck out with his full strength. The god-tier battle skill collided with the Azure King's huge claw with the might of the ways of the world, erupting with a deafening boom. Space cracked in the sky. The cracks were as dense as spider webs, as storms of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings. However, not only did Ming Xie's strike fail to injure the Azure King at all, but even became the Azure King's primary target. Immediately, the trajectory of the Azure King's claw changed, directly crushing towards Ming Xie. Before the claw had even arrived, the terrifying killing intent froze the space around Ming Xie. Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance, you dare to kill me? Ming Xie bellowed out furiously as a layer of dazzling, golden light enveloped him. A set of shining, impressive armor appeared on Ming Xie. The armor was a defensive god artifact. It seemed to have fused with Ming Xie's flesh and blood. With the armor, Ming Xie's presence immediately skyrocketed. However, Ming Xie was only a 9th heavenly layer chaotic prime, so there was still an insurmountable difference between him and the renowned Azure King. Even with the god artifact armor, it was still not enough to fend off the Azure King. Of course, that was not the greatest use of the armor. After the armor appeared, the Azure King's claw that reached towards Ming Xie suddenly came to a halt. It came to a halt in the air. The golden armor seemed to be a protective talisman. It enveloped Ming Xie with dazzling light, preventing the Azure King's shocking strike from actually landing on Ming Xie. Whether it was the Righteous Alliance or the Four Symbols Alliance, all the peak experts paid close attention to the Pingtian Empire on the Cloud Plain. Nothing that happened in the Pingtian Empire could escape their eyes and ears. As a result, when Ming Xie donned the golden armor and the Azure King's attacks came to a halt, the peak experts all saw it clearly. However, when they noticed Ming Xie's armor, all of their hearts could not help but thump violently. Their faces changed at the same time. They were all old monsters who had lived for who knows how many tens of thousands of years. They were very knowledgeable and immediately recognized what the armor on Ming Xie's body represented. The armor of the Heavenly Palace of Bixing. He's actually a divine general of the Heavenly Palace of Bixing. How is this possible? There's actually a divine general from the Heavenly Palace of Bixing hidden in the Pingtian Empire. A 9th heavenly layer chaotic prime divine general. A divine general like that is someone with status in the Heavenly Palace of Bixing. But why has a divine general of the Heavenly Palace of Bixing come to our Cloud Plain? The revelation of Ming Xie's true identity caused all the peak experts of the two alliances on the Cloud Plain to feel extremely uneasy. In particular, the peak experts of the Four Symbols Alliance all revealed extremely ugly expressions. They were filled with lingering fear. As soon as they thought about how they had made the decision to ask Ming Xie to submit and kill him if he did not, they felt a chill inside. What kind of organization was the Heavenly Palace of Bishing? It was a supreme organization that truly stood at the apex of the saints' world. It was an unshakable colossus. Even without the État, Grand Exalt, just the first majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing alone was enough to command everyone. Their four symbols alliance might have been one of the peak organizations on the cloud plane, but they were no different from children before the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. How is this possible? Zhang Hu, who led the experts to destroy the Pingtian Empire, had become stunned long ago. He stared at Ming Xie's armor blankly as he became completely stunned. His thoughts came to a halt. At this moment, Ming Xie no longer cared about Zhang Hu and the others who had come with ill intentions. He wore his armor as he shone with dazzling golden light. He charged into outer space as a streak of light and faced the Azure Peng King. Divine generals of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing? Why is it you again? The Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance roared out furiously outside the cloud plane. His azure eyes shone with vicious light, making him seem extremely irritable. The first time when he wanted to kill Mingdong outside the Azure Poseidon Palace, he encountered the people of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. In the end, he even drew out the first majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, heavily injuring him. Now he had come to the distant cloud plain and was about to destroy the Tianyuan family founded by Jianqin, but he encountered the people of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing again. Moreover, it was a divine general who was a ninth heavenly layer chaotic prime. This made the Azure Peng King feel resentful. He felt like he had nowhere to vent his anger. Ninth heavenly layer chaotic prime, divine generals possessed a certain amount of status in the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. Although he, the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance, was unruly, he was not truly lawless. He knew who he could afford to offend and who he could not. However, the divine general before him was someone he would not dare to touch even if he was 10 times more courageous, as the consequences would be even more severe than offending the celestial sword saint. If he made a mistake, he might draw out the first majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing again. Azure Peng King, if you dare to destroy the Tianyuan family, I, Mingdong, will destroy you. At this moment, a bellow rang out from below. The white-robed Mingdong flew out from the Tianyuan family. Under the gazes of all the peak experts on a cloud plane, he charged into outer space fearlessly. He glared at the Azure Peng King furiously. Who is this young man? What bold words! Does this young man really overestimate himself to say something like that to the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance? Or does he have some shocking background? This young man. I remember now. Isn't the divine general of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing always by this young man's side? Has the divine general been protecting this young man the entire time? Heavens! Just who is this young man called Mingdong? With Mingdong's appearance, all the peak experts on the desolate plain cried out. Their hearts were in turmoil. You want to destroy me? With just an ant-like divine king like you? The Azure Peng King was completely infuriated by Mingdong's words. He radiated with powerful killing intent, causing space to freeze up as he surged towards Mingdong. Ming Xia arrived before Mingdong in a flash and blocked the Azure Peng King's killing intent. He said, coldly, Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance, he does indeed have that ability. The Azure Peng King's eyes narrowed. His sharp gaze paused on Mingdong for a while before looking at Ming Xia. He asked coldly, who is he? The ninth majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. As he said that, a barrier appeared and enveloped the surrounding space, preventing his voice from leaking out. What? When the Azure Peng King heard the ninth majesty, his colossal body immediately trembled violently. He cried out, impossible. The Heavenly Palace of Bishing only has 8 majesties, and a few of them have died. Where did the ninth majesty come from? Is it? The Azure Peng King seemed to realize something when he reached the end. Shock filled his eyes. The heavenly palace of Bishing only had 8 majesties. This was common knowledge in the Saints' world. All the experts in the Saints' world knew that the Aneta Grand Prime, one of the 7 Grand Exalts, had died over 3 million years ago. Aneta was dead, so it was impossible for the heavenly palace of Bishing to produce a 9th majesty. Even the disciple of the first majesty, Exan, did not have the right to become a new majesty. Chapter 2456. Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance. I don't think you really want to oppose our heavenly palace of Bishing either, said Mingxia. Mingxia said. His armor was dazzling, making him seem like a small sun in the dark outer space. The heavenly palace of Bishing was his powerful backing, so he did not fear the infamous heavenly king of Azure Brilliance in the Saints' world. The Azure Prung King remained silent. The light in his vicious eyes flickered as he constantly glanced past Mingdong, whether intentionally or not. On the surface, the Azure Pung King seemed extremely composed, but in reality his heart was not calm at all. It was basically churning inside. He did not care about Mingdong. What he truly cared about was the appearance of the 9th majesty of the heavenly palace of Bishing. This meant that the Aneta Grand Prime of the 7 Grand Exalts of the Saints' world had not died over 3 million years ago, like the legends had said. Instead, she was still alive. Azure Prung King, Jianqin is my sworn brother. If you target Jianqin again, I will never spare you in the future. And the Tianyuan family, this is my home. If you dare to destroy my home, I will never forgive you. I will ask my first senior sister and master to take action, no matter the cost, said Mingdong. His voice was cold, and he was extremely tough. He was filled with determination. The Azure Prung King was furious when he heard that. Who was he? He was the renowned Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance, one of the 4 heavenly kings who reigned over the Lone Heaven Plain. Just how prideful was he? Now that the puny divine king had threatened him so mercilessly, killing intent immediately surged in the Azure Pung King's heart. His blood was about to boil as he almost lost his mind. However, as soon as he thought about Mingdong's identity as the 9th majesty of the heavenly palace of Bishing, the Azure Pung King dared not actually attack, no matter how furious he was. He deeply understood just how terrifying the Grand Exalts in the Saints' world, who had comprehended the laws to the limit and could interfere with the operation of the laws of the world with their will were. Their will could descend anywhere in the Saints' world with a single thought. In the eyes of experts like that, there was truly no distance in the boundless Saints' world. Without any exaggeration, no one in the Saints' world could kill a Grand Exalt's disciple. This was because as long as he dared to attack, the Grand Exalt would descend the moment he attacked. This was because Grand Exalts were the ways of the world, the laws. They could reach any place in the Saints' world in a single instance. They did not need to travel at all. The only way to kill the Grand Exalt's disciple was to keep them busy so that they had no time to care about anything else. In reality, all the majesties who died in the heavenly palace of Bishing had died in the shocking battles that had erupted in history. The Aneta Grand Exalt had been kept busy by other experts of the same level. This was because, at that time, even many Grand Exalts were unable to take care of themselves. They faced the danger of death, so they naturally did not have the strength to protect their disciples. The Azure Pung King sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed his killing intent. He stared at Mingdong coldly and snorted coldly. If it weren't for your master and first senior sister behind you, you would only be an ant in my eyes. I don't even need to personally kill you. All I need to do is blow, and you'll be reduced to ashes. With that, the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance shot off into the distance in a single instance, vanishing into the depths of outer space. In the end, he still did not dare to actually touch the Tianyuan family. The peak experts of the Righteous Alliance and Four Symbols Alliance all fell silent when they saw the Azure Pung King arrive aggressively only to leave dejectedly in the end. At that moment, they finally understood the origins of Ming Xia, who possessed astonishing battle prowess despite his unknown origins. in the Tianyuan family. At the same time, they understood just how astonishing the background of the Tianyuan clan, which was only a sesame seed on the cloud plain, was. Ming Xie had cast down a barrier in outer space, preventing his conversation with the heavenly king of azure brilliance from leaking out. So the peak experts of the cloud plain still did not know Ming Dong's exact identity. However, just his identity as a divine general of the heavenly palace of Bixing was enough to tie the Tianyuan family together. The Tianyuan family's status on the cloud plain immediately became extremely special. Ming Dong returned to the Tianyuan family and vanished from everyone's sight. He did not ask about the matters of the Four Symbols Alliance at all. Ming Xie, on the other hand, stowed away the standard armor that represented his identity as a divine general of the heavenly palace of Bixing. He returned to his scholarly, middle-aged self and returned from outer space, appearing before Zheng, Hu, and the others. You want to destroy the Pingtian Empire? Destroy the Tianyuan family? Ming Xie stared at Zheng, Hu calmly, and asked calmly. At this moment, Zheng, who was no longer able to maintain his composure when he faced this chaotic prime who was weaker than him, he became rather flustered. No. It's a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. Zheng, who smiled apologetically as he waved his hands. He spoke politely and no longer dared to show any arrogance. His attitude had changed drastically. The person standing before him was a high-level divine general of the heavenly palace of Bixing. Even if their Four Symbols Alliance were bold, they would not dare to offend him. It's all a misunderstanding. How could our Four Symbols Alliance be bold enough to destroy the Pingtian Empire? How could we destroy the Tianyuan family? Please don't misunderstand. Afterwards, figures flickered, and 4 more people of various ages appeared. They were the other 4 peak experts of the Four Symbols Alliance. At this moment, the 5 peak experts of the Four Symbols Alliance had all arrived at the boundary of the Pingtian Empire. They all concealed their presences and maintained an extremely low profile. They did their best to explain to Ming Xie. They were very sincere and humble. Moreover, they even gave out a space ring. Inside was the wealth that the Four Symbols Alliance had accumulated over many years. It was an extremely huge amount. They offered it to Ming Xie voluntarily to express their goodwill. Ming Xie instead hesitated when he saw the space ring. He knew who he was. Instead of saying that the space ring was a gift to him, it was more accurate to say that it was a gift to Ming Dong. He did not dare to make the decision himself. Take the space ring. I don't need your things. Anyway, don't interfere with the matters of the Tianyuan family in the future, or I won't spare you. At this moment, Ming Dong's voice rang out. His voice was cold and forceful. He did not take the Four Symbols Alliance seriously at all. We won't. From today onwards, the Tianyuan family and the Pingtian Empire will be the most esteemed guests of our Four Symbols Alliance. The authoritative figures of the Four Symbols Alliance all expressed their opinions. They still did not know Ming Dong's true identity. However, now that things had progressed to this point, anyone with half a brain could tell that Ming Dong's origins were astonishing. Even this powerful divine general from the heavenly palace of Bixing had to listen to his orders. The Four Symbols Alliance would never dare to offend someone like that. At the same time, the experts of the Righteous Alliance gathered together in the central region of the Cloud Plain. They stared in the direction of the Tianyuan family from afar. I never thought that the Tianyuan family would actually be supported by the heavenly palace of Bixing. That young man called Ming Dong has an extremely great status in the heavenly palace of Bixing. Is he the disciple of the First Majesty? The peak experts of the Righteous Alliance discussed. All right, the Shi family is currently reorganizing the empire and reclaiming their lost territory. The Skyren sect and the Sword sect of Four Poles have already worked with many organizations in the northern region. They're using Shi Lianshue's betrayal as an excuse to oppose the Shi dynasty. They've even asked for help from our God's Fallen clan. hoping that we can send experts to wipe out the Shi Empire. What do you think? At this moment, the ancestor of the God's Fallen clan, Luo Mantian, asked for the opinions of the others. The ancestor of the Tong family, Tong Wuming, glanced at Luo Mantian deeply and said steadily, "I've heard that a princess of the Shi family is an elder in the Tianyuan family. She possesses great status. Now that the Tianyuan family is supported by the heavenly palace of Bishing, what do you think we should do?" Chapter 2457. Luo Mantian nodded after hearing what the Si family patriarch, Tong Wuming, and the Qinkuin sect patriarch, Zhou Zhidao, said. In reality, after learning that the chaotic prime of unknown origins in the Tianyuan family was a divine general of the heavenly palace of Bishing, Luo Mantian had already thought about how he should treat the Shi family. He had only asked this because he wanted to understand what the others were thinking. Now, basically everyone was thinking the same thing as him. "Let's pay a visit to the Tianyuan family as well," said the Peak Lord. He had white hair and a ruddy complexion. He possessed an otherworldly demeanor as he hovered in the air. His white robes ruffled in the wind, making him seem like an immortal. Then he took a single step in the air, and his figure disappeared in an instant. He crossed an extremely great distance with just a single step. Afterwards, the other peak experts of the Righteous Alliance gathered on the Heaven's Link Peak, all followed behind the Peak Lord. All the peak experts of the Righteous Alliance had arrived in the southern region, which immediately made the Four Symbols Alliance feel like they were facing a great enemy. The powerful killing formations across the entire southern region showed signs of activating. "There's no need to be nervous. We've not come to fight with you," said the Peak Lord calmly. Beside him, the remaining peak experts of the Righteous Alliance all stared at Zheng, Hu, and the others with cold gazes. The 5 peak experts of the Four Symbols Alliance all fell silent when they heard that. However, they still dared not let their guard down. They were filled with caution, and the powerful killing formations across the entire southern region were ready to be activated at any time. The Peak Lord and the others no longer paid any attention to the Righteous Alliance. They all arrived outside the barrier of the Pingtian Empire. They wanted to pay a visit to the Tianyuan family. However, Mingdong did not give them any face at all. He did not let them in. "There's no need for a visit. I can't be bothered with the grievances between your Righteous Alliance and the Four Symbols Alliance. As long as you don't involve the Tianyuan family, you can cause as much trouble as you want." Mingdong's voice rang out from the Tianyuan family and directly drifted out of the Pingtian Empire, landing in the ears of the Peak Lord and the others. After being refused entry, the peak experts of the Righteous Alliance were not angered at all. Instead, they were even more certain of Mingdong's shocking background. This was because the chaotic prime divine general of the heavenly palace of Bishing had not spoken. With such an attitude, wasn't it obvious that Mingdong was in charge? At this moment, the divine king, who had already reached the primordial realm, stood on the roof of a hall in his dragon robes within the imperial palace of the Pingtian Empire. He gazed at the boundary of the Pingtian Empire in the distance. Behind him was a white-robed old man. He was the Grand Imperial Protector of the Pingtian Empire, Bowen. The divine king stood as straight as a sword. Vaguely, a sharp sword chi seemed to radiate from him, giving off the presence of a sword immortal. He stood there quietly as he gazed at the horizon. Only after quite a while did he sigh gently. He murmured to himself, I really never thought that the Tianyuan family founded by Jianqin would actually possess such power now, where all the peak experts renowned across the cloud plain have come to visit them. Even in my eyes, these people are all lofty and unreachable great figures. Your Majesty, this is the glory of the Empire. Right now, our Pingtian Empire is renowned across the cloud plain because of the existence of the Tianyuan family. Looking at the current situation, as long as the Tianyuan family still exists, no one will dare to provoke our Pingtian Empire on the cloud plain. We will be respected everywhere, Bowen said passionately. The glory of the empire? Indeed, due to the existence of the Tianyuan family, the reputation and status of the Pingtian Empire on the Cloud Plain have already reached a peak that even I cannot imagine. We can avoid many disputes, and we can be respected everywhere. However, this is not what I want, the Divine King said slowly. His eyes were extremely deep. Your Majesty, why is that? Grand Imperial Protector Bowen was puzzled. After a moment of silence, the Divine King said, Firstly, living too peaceful a life will gradually corrupt people. With the deterrence of the Tianyuan family, it will be impossible for our Pingtian Empire to have any conflicts for a very long time in the future. Without conflict and the baptism of blood, the Pingtian Empire will be like a flower in a greenhouse. It will wither in the face of a storm. It will be very difficult for it to truly flourish. The Divine King paused when he reached there. A sliver of mixed feelings appeared on his face, and he said slowly, Secondly, I am the Divine King of the Pingtian Empire. I am in control of the Pingtian Empire. Yet I live under the light of the Tianyuan family. As a Divine King, I feel aggrieved. Wen's face changed slightly when he heard that. He immediately became flustered, and he said in a hurry, Your Majesty, there are countless organizations across the entire Saints world that do everything they can to seek the protection of a large organization so that they can continue to exist. The fortuitous encounter of our Pingtian Empire is enough to make countless organizations in the Saints world green with envy. I comprehend the way of the sword. The sword needs to maintain its edge, or it will decay in the end. Living a peaceful life is not beneficial to my way. The Divine King paused when he reached there. At that moment, he seemed to have made up his mind. A sliver of determination appeared on his face. Wen, I plan on abdicating and passing the throne to someone else. The Divine King's shocking words shocked the Grand Imperial Protector greatly. Bitterness filled his face. After a moment of silence, he asked hoarsely, May I ask which prince has caught your eye, Your Majesty? The Divine King shook his head. The current Pingtian Empire is completely under the protection of the Tianyuan family. The princes under me are not suitable for the throne. It's better for the throne to be inherited by someone from the Tianyuan family. The Tianyuan family used to be a small organization called the Mo clan. The patriarch of the Mo clan, Mo Xingfeng, was indebted to Jianqin in the past, while Mo Xingfeng's daughter, Mo Yan, was deeply loved by Jianqin. At the same time, his adopted daughter was the princess of the Shi dynasty in the northern region. In the entire Tianyuan family, the only person I can think of who is most suitable for the throne is Mo Xingfeng. The next day, the Divine King personally hurried to the Tianyuan family in the Dong and province. He began a secret discussion with the patriarch of the Mo clan in the past, Mo Xingfeng, in a secret room. He only left 3 days later. Before long, the Divine King formally announced his abdication. Mo Xingfeng would become the new Divine King of the Pingtian Empire with assistance of the Grand Imperial Protector, Wen. Chapter 2458. The Pingtian Empire had officially changed hands. The former patriarch of the Mo clan, Mo Xingfeng, had become the greatest decision-maker of the Pingtian Empire. However, it had to be mentioned that the Divine King's decision to pass the throne to Mo Xingfeng was an extremely brilliant one. Although Mo Xingfeng was not very powerful, he was one of the earliest people to come in contact with Jianqin. As a result, he was one of the founding members of the Tianyuan clan. He possessed quite the status. Now that he had become the Divine King of the Pingtian Empire, the relationship between the Pingtian Empire and the Tianyuan family had become even closer. Of course, all of this was caused by the exposure of Ming Xie's identity as the divine general of the heavenly palace of Bixing. Not only did the exposure of Ming Xie's identity increase the status of the Pingtian Empire and the Tianyuan family, but even the Shi clan in the northern region benefited greatly. The Shi dynasty that once reigned supreme in the northern region gradually collapsed after Shi Lianxue fell under the control of the heavenless demon Exalt and switched sides to the Tian Empire. Afterwards, due to the encirclement of the peak organizations of the Shi dynasty, the Skyren sect, and the Sword sect of Four Poles. The imperial clan had almost been completely wiped out. Even the imperial palace had changed hands, having been taken over by the enemy. Afterwards, with Emperor Shi and the other two chaotic primes breaking free with Ming Xie's assistance, the Shi clan finally emerged from danger. They truly possess the power to contend against the Skyren sect and the Sword sect of Four Poles. In the past few years, the Shi dynasty gradually stabilized under the lead of the current emperor, Shi Ziyun. They began to slowly reclaim their lost territory. However, at this moment, the Skyren sect and the Sword sect of Four Poles that had fallen out with Imperial clan long ago worked together with many organizations of various sizes in the northern region, using the matter of Shi Lianxue as an excuse to form a powerful alliance. They resisted the Imperial clan and did everything they could to prevent the unification of the Shi Empire. As a matter of fact, the ancestors of the Skyren sect and the Sword sect of Four Poles had even paid several visits to the God's Fallen clan in the northern region, hoping that the God's Fallen clan would send experts to completely wipe out the Shi clan. However, now that Ming Xie's identity as the divine general of the heavenly palace of Bixing had been exposed, the God's Fallen clan, and even the peak experts of the entire Righteous Alliance, changed their attitude towards the Shi dynasty. On this day, just as the upper echelon of the Shi dynasty were in a hurry to reclaim their lost territory and unify the empire, the two chaotic primes of the Skyren sect and the Sword sect of Four Poles that had always stood in their way arrived at the boundary of the Shi dynasty with the leaders of various organizations. They came to offer their apologies and pledge their loyalty to the Shi dynasty. Since then, the Shi dynasty had completely recovered its lost land and unified the northern region, becoming the overlord of the northern region. As for the God's Fallen clan, although they were a peak organization that stood at the peak of a plain and were also located in the northern region, they acted as a hermit clan most of the time. They almost never interfered with the secular world. The heavenly king of Azure Brilliance returned to the Azure Brilliance mountain that hovered in the sky on the lone heaven plain. In his human form, he stood at the top of the mountain as his face was extremely sunken. A monstrous rage had been brewing in his chest for a long time, causing anyone who looked at him to feel that he was a barrel that could explode at any moment. Jianqin, this king will remember you. This king will never forget you. The heavenly king of Azure Brilliance said through gritted teeth. He felt extremely wronged. After failing to wipe out the Tianyuan family and returning in disgrace, the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance, who was petty and vengeful in the first place, placed all of this on Jianqin. As a result, his resentment towards Jianqin became even more intense. In particular, when he thought about how he was the famed heavenly king of Azure Brilliance, who was revered wherever he went, he became even more fearful. Ever since he met Jianqin, he had been unlucky. Not only had he failed to kill Jianqin several times, but he had also been injured time and time again. This made his resentment towards Jianqin so deep that it was almost enough to destroy the world. Jianqin was about to become the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance's inner demon. Jianqin, you probably never expected that the true master of the Anata Tower, the Anata Grand Prime, hasn't died like the rumors say. You dare to lay your hands on the Anata Tower and even recklessly refine it. You'll die to the hands of a grand exalt sooner or later. At this moment, the Azure Pung King seemed to think of something, and he immediately smiled coldly. No. However, the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance's face suddenly stiffened after that. His eyes became filled with shock, and he growled. The Anata Grand Prime is a grand exalt of the saints' world. She possesses vast abilities. As long as she's still alive, no matter where the Anata Tower is hidden, even if it's hidden in the various lower worlds, grand exalts should be able to find it with a single thought. However, why is Jianqin still in possession of the Anata Tower? If the Anata Grand Prime is already dead, then it would make sense for Jianqin to possess the Anata Tower. However, the Anata Grand Prime is clearly still alive, and she has taken in a 9th disciple. She should have known about the Inata Tower long ago, so why hasn't she taken it back? Does this mean that the Inata Grand Prime has allowed Jianqin to possess the Inata Tower? The Azure Peng King's face immediately changed when he thought up to there. His heart churned. At that moment, he could not help but think back to his experiences of hunting down Jianqin. When he thought about how he had chased after Jianqin through the spatial crack and ended up trapped by the temporal vortices for no reason, he seemed to understand something. He was immediately shocked. It's the Inata Grand Prime. It's the Inata Grand Prime. She's secretly controlling everything. The Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance cried out inside as he struggled to remain calm. However, he could not understand why the Inata Grand Prime was doing this, no matter how he thought about it. Several large-scale teleportation formations stood in an extremely bustling city on a vast continent far from the desolate plain. A few of the teleportation formations would flicker from time to time. As the power of teleportation surged, cultivators would be teleported away one by one. There was a teleportation formation that seemed even larger and more complicated at the center of the teleportation formations. However, it would often remain silent for months or even years. Compared to the surrounding teleportation formations, which were bustling with people coming and going, this teleportation formation, which was even larger, appeared rather special. This was because this teleportation formation was an interplanar teleportation formation that could transport people from plane to plane. Across the 49 Great Planes and 81 Great Planets of the Saints' World, there were very few teleportation formations like this. Only powerful organizations could construct them. At this moment, the interplanar teleportation formation that had remained silent for several years suddenly shone with dazzling light. The power of teleportation surged violently, and a young man and woman silently appeared in the teleportation formation. The man was burly and stocky. His exposed upper body was filled with muscles that possessed explosive power. The woman's appearance was nothing special. She did not seem to be special at all. She was the type that would not attract any attention, even if she was thrown into a crowd. Chapter 2459. Not only did Jianqin wear Mo Tianyun's mask to hide his presence, but even his figure had changed drastically under his deliberate efforts. Kea had also changed his appearance. Neither of them had used their original appearances. The two of them are only at the Divine King realm, yet they've used a teleportation formation to cross planes. It's obvious with a single glance that they have great origins. That's a teleportation formation that can cross planes. I heard that the cost of a single teleportation is astronomical. Even regular primordial realm experts can't afford it. Jianqin and Kea's arrival immediately attracted the attention of the people around the teleportation formation. Many people studied Jianqin and Kea as they discussed softly. "Let's go!" Jianqin called out and immediately pulled Kea away, vanishing into the sea of people. At the same time, many peak experts on the distant desolate plain were in no mood to continue searching for Jianqin and the Inata Tower after being affected by the blood tear Grand Exalt's matter. They all left the desolate plain with Gusta's flesh and returned to their clans. However, there was an exception. He was an old man with a hooked nose and short hair. He came from one of the 49 Great Planes of the Saints' World, the ancestor of a large organization on the Aquaplane. He was known as the Elder of Mountains and Seas. Although the Elder of Mountains and Seas had already left the desolate plain, he was in no hurry to return to the Aquaplane. Instead, he sat in the sea of stars and used a secret technique as if he was sensing something. After a long while, the Elder of Mountains and Seas slowly opened his eyes. A sliver of excitement appeared in his eyes, and he sneered. "Jianqin, old man has already seen your true form outside the Sword God Mountains. What you didn't expect is that old man possesses an innate ability. As long as the old man glances at someone, no matter how far they flee or where they hide, the old man will be able to find them in the sea of people. Before he saw you, old man couldn't do anything to you. He couldn't find you with his various divinations, but since you've appeared in Old Man's eyes, there's nowhere for you to hide. Hee, Old Man has already found you. I never thought you would have left the desolate plain without anyone knowing. However, that's exactly what I want. If I were on the desolate plain, the Inatut Tower might not end up in my hands, even if I managed to take it. Now that you've left the desolate plain without anyone knowing, only Old Man knows where you are. It looks like the Inatut Tower will belong to the Old Man. Old Man's fortuitous encounter has arrived. Jianchen, I'd like to see where you can hide now. The Elder of Mountains and Seas snickered excitedly. He immediately flew off in the direction he sensed. He moved extremely quickly, disappearing into the sea of stars with a few flashes. On the other side, Jianchen and Kea had already learnt that they were currently on the Jade Spring Plain of the 49 Great Plains of the Saints' World after some investigation. The city they were currently in was the royal capital of one of the everlasting empires on the Jade Spring Plain, the Divine Power Empire. The Jade Spring Plain ranked slightly lower than the Desolate Plain among the 49 Great Plains of the Saints' World. In reality, the Jade Spring Plain did not lose out to the Desolate Plain in terms of peak experts. The only flaw was that the Jade Spring Plain lacked a peak expert like the Celestial Sword Saint who could deter an entire plain. The Jade Spring Plain is just too close to the Desolate Plain, so we can't stay here for too long. We need to leave as soon as possible, Jianchen said. He was secretly furious. Back on the Desolate Plain, he had left in too much of a hurry. As a result, he had not chosen a location for the teleportation due to a moment of carelessness. As a result, the unkempt old man had teleported him to the Jade Spring Plain that was closest to the Desolate Plain. He had spent 2,000 5-colored divine crystals, but he had only managed to teleport him to a place that only required a few dozen 5-colored divine crystals. He had indeed suffered quite a great loss. Now, the 5-colored divine crystals he had obtained after so much difficulty had all been used up. The Jade Spring Plain is indeed incomplete. If the people from the Desolate Plain want to come here, they won't need to spend too much time even if they don't use teleportation formations. We can't let them trap us here again, Kea agreed. He believed that the further they were from the Desolate Plain, the safer it would be. After a while of thought, Jianchen said, "We don't have any 5-colored divine crystals anymore, so we can't use teleportation formations across plains. If we want to leave the Jade Spring Plain, we can only take a spatial battleship." "Then where should we go?" Kea asked. "The Inatut Tower is a hot potato. I planned on returning the Inatut Tower to the Heavenly Palace of Bishing in exchange for a great merit," said Jianchen. He understood that as long as the Inatut Tower remained with him, he would never be at peace. He would become the target of many peak experts. If these people discovered his origins and found the Tianyuan family, he would be in deep trouble. After all, he had left the Cloud Plain for many years, so he had no idea what the Tianyuan family's current situation was like. Although Ming Dong had already hurried to the Tianyuan family after leaving the Azure Poseidon Palace, he could not help but prepare for the worst. Before long, Jianchen and Kea arrived at the spatial port of the Shen Quan Empire. They planned on taking a spatial battleship to the Shenzhou Plain where the Heavenly Palace of Bishing resided. Although he possessed the strength to travel through outer space, he was nowhere near as fast as a spatial battleship. After all, even the lowest level spatial battlefield could move faster than 9th heavenly layer infinite primes. It was impossible for anyone who was not a chaotic prime to catch up. With his current strength, it was impossible for him to travel faster than a spatial battleship even if he used the laws of space. However, after checking how long it would take to travel to the Shenzhou Plain, Jianchen became troubled. The Jade Spring Plain was extremely distant from the Shenzhou Plain. They had to pass through several great plains and over a dozen great planets. Just flying through outer space would take several tens of thousands of years. This did not even include the time they would need to avoid the harassment of various space beasts and the time they would need to avoid some dangerous regions. Otherwise, it would take even longer. Jianchen could not afford to wait for such a long time. Let's go to the Star Brilliance Plane. The Star Brilliance Plane is the closest to the Jade Spring Plane. It'll only take around a decade to get there. I can use that time to properly cultivate on the spatial battleship. Jianqin quickly made up his mind. Not only did he possess Gusta's 5 droplets of essence blood, but he even possessed the fleshly core that was the source of Gusta's power, let alone reaching the 14th layer of the chaotic body. He would not need to worry about cultivation resources, even if he wanted to break through to the 15th or even 16th layer. As long as his comprehension reached a certain level, his chaotic body would immediately break through. Afterwards, Jianqin changed his appearance again, disguising himself as a middle-aged man with a medium build. He put on Mo Tianyun's mask and boarded the spatial battleship with Kea. They hurried off to the Star Brilliance Plane. Before long, the spatial battleship rose up and left the Jade Spring Plane. It shot through the vast sea of stars. Jianqin immediately entered seclusion. After personally casting down a formation, he immediately took out Gusta's essence blood and began to absorb its power. He was prepared to reach the 14th layer of the chaotic body. The 13th layer of the chaotic body allowed him to possess the battle prowess of early primordial realm experts. He could kill early primordial realm experts. However, in reality, his cultivation was only at the peak of the Divine King realm if he used the standards of the Saints' world to measure it. The 14th layer of the chaotic body corresponded to the infinite primes of the Saints' world. After all, the chaotic body was a different cultivation system. Whether it was the cultivation system of the immortals' world or the Saints' world, it was completely different. It was impossible to make an accurate comparison between the two. He could only make a rough comparison. The 14th layer of the chaotic body is equivalent to infinite primes in the Saints' world. The 15th layer is also infinite primes. According to my estimations, the 14th layer should be the peak of early infinite primes, which is around the 3rd heavenly layer of infinite primes. The 15th layer is late infinite primes, which is the 7th to 9th heavenly layer of infinite primes. The 16th, 17th, and 18th layers correspond to early, mid, and late chaotic primes. The 18th layer is the limit of the chaotic body. The limit is peak chaotic prime, Jianqin sighed. This is because no one who has cultivated the chaotic body in the immortals world has been able to surpass the 18th layer and reach the legendary Great Perfection. Great Perfection is the grand prime of the Saints' world, the immortal exalt of the immortals world. Chapter 2460. Jianqin sat in the cabin. Beside him was a palm-sized white jade bottle. The bottle contained Gusta's essence blood. Jianqin had already removed one of the 5 droplets of essence blood. The pea-sized essence blood shone with a dazzling golden light as it hovered before Jianqin silently. The energy within the droplet of essence blood was extremely terrifying. If it erupted, it would be devastating, enough to obliterate an entire region of space. However, the energy within the essence blood was completely concealed. It did not leak out at all. Otherwise, Jianqin's formations would not have been able to conceal such powerful pulses of energy. Currently, the energy within the droplet of essence blood was being absorbed by Jianqin bit by bit. After refining it, it formed new chaotic force that filled his chaotic Naiden. As the energy within the essence blood was constantly absorbed, the chaotic Naiden in Jianqin's dantian gradually grew and strengthened. This droplet of essence blood contains the power of curses. The power of curses came from the expert who comprehended the laws of curses. I've also obtained his golden core of laws. So the power of curses can't affect me, Jianqin thought. His laws of curses had already reached the level of the Divine King, so he had discovered the laws of curses in the essence blood long ago. As he absorbed the essence blood, the power of curses seeped into his body before being absorbed by the golden cores of laws in his soul. As a result, the power of curses was useless against him. The power of curses will spread through the power of the bloodline, With Gusta's bloodline as a guide, it can cross through space and directly affect the ancient great apes. I wonder if the ancient great apes will be affected. Jianqin opened his eyes and looked in the direction of the cabin door. His gaze seemed to pass through the door and into the endless space beyond the spatial battleship. Whatever. I'll cultivate first. My priority is to reach the 14th layer of the chaotic body. Jianqin dismissed his thoughts and began to focus on cultivation. 9 Clouds Plain, Heaven-Splitting Clan. The heaven-splitting ancestor, who only seemed to be in his 30s, stood with his hands behind his back. An invisible presence radiated from him, as if it was interfering with the laws and order of this space at all times, causing the world around him to revolve around his will. It was as if he was the absolute ruler of this world. As one of the most powerful experts below Grand Exalts, an existence infinitely close to the heavenly ways, even though the heaven-splitting ancestor was still unable to influence the laws and order of an entire world, he could already control a small region of space. He was extremely powerful. A space ring hovered silently before the heaven-splitting ancestor. Nearby was Tu San, who bowed respectfully. Bang! At this moment, the interspatial ring suddenly exploded. Pieces of flesh and broken limbs, mixed with a lot of golden blood, appeared out of thin air. Among them, every single piece of flesh was incomparably large, comparable to a mountain. This was especially true for the thick arm in the middle, which was even tens of thousands of feet long. The heaven-splitting ancestor's courtyard was unable to hold so many pieces of flesh and broken limbs. However, at this moment, a powerful will appeared, altering the order and laws. Immediately, all the large pieces of flesh and broken limbs shrank to the size of an ordinary person. Even the arm that was several thousand meters long became 4 feet long. The heaven-splitting ancestor stared at the pieces of flesh and blood calmly. He said, "Gusta's blood contains the power of a curse. This is the curse of the bloodline. As long as it's an ancient great ape, no matter how far away they are, they won't be able to escape the curse. It's just that the person who cast the curse has done something unnecessary. He doesn't know that the ancient great apes have basically been wiped out after the battle against the spirit sages. Even their 2 remaining dark gold emperors have been slain by the wind venerable of the spirit sages. It has already been a very long time since the ancient great apes have been seen in the saints' world. Perhaps this race has completely vanished from the universe. Master, how should we deal with the flesh and blood?" Tu San asked politely. He was uneasy. After all, this matter was related to the blood tier Grand Exalt. "Leave Gusta's flesh and blood here for now. Let's see how the blood tier Grand Exalt reacts," the heaven-splitting ancestor said slowly. He looked at the boundless sea of stars, and his gaze was extremely deep. "I keep feeling like there's something fishy about this matter. Something's off. This is because the blood tier Grand Exalt's reaction is rather abnormal. Gusta's body has already been nurtured on the desolate plain for countless years, yet no one has sensed it during such a long period of time. It's impossible for the 2 dark gold emperors of the ancient great apes to achieve something like that. Although they are powerful, their battle prowess lies in battle prowess. In terms of techniques and abilities, they're nowhere near as powerful as other experts of the same level. As a result, the blood tier Grand Exalt must be behind this. Since the blood tier Grand Exalt values Gusta's body, it's impossible for the broken limbs to end up in your hands. The blood tier Grand Exalt will take them back. With the Grand Exalt's abilities, it'll be a piece of cake for him to recover Gusta's shattered body. However, in reality, the blood tier Grand Exalt didn't take Gusta's limbs back. Since the blood tier Grand Exalt values Gusta's body, yet he ignored it and allowed you to take it, there's something fishy about this matter. The final point is Jianqin. Jianqin is the main culprit behind the destruction of Gusta's body. Logically speaking, the blood tier Grand Exalt shouldn't have spared him, But in reality, the blood-tier Grand Exalt didn't take anyone away from the desolate plain, nor did he kill anyone. He left very suddenly, which is truly puzzling. The laws of the world intersected in the heaven-splitting ancestor's eyes. Thousands of laws intersected as he deduced. I just feel like this matter isn't as simple as it seems on the surface. There seems to be some unknown secret behind it. Master, then Jianshin. Tu, San asked carefully. The heaven-splitting ancestor sank into his thoughts when he heard that. He said, after what happened with the blood-tier Grand Exalt, I feel like Jianshin is even more complicated than I imagined him to be. There's no need for you to take action again. Once Jianshin emerges, I'll personally go see him. I'm very curious just what secrets he hides on him for me to be unable to peer into his secrets at all. Also, is Gusta's fleshly core on Jianshin? The fleshly core is the most precious thing on Gusta. With that, the heaven-splitting ancestor vanished. When he reappeared, he was already in the Tsang Poseidon Palace. The defenses of the Tsang Poseidon Palace were completely useless against the heaven-splitting ancestor. They were unable to stop him at all. Senior, has big brother Jianshin come? Before long, Ziyun and Xiao Man hurried over under the notice of the artifact spirit of the Tsang Poseidon Palace. As soon as she saw the heaven-splitting ancestor, Xiao Man asked eagerly. She looked around as if she wanted to find traces of Jianshin. Although Ziyun did not say anything, the light in her eyes flickered with hope. Jianshin is very safe. He doesn't need my protection. I've come this time to ask you one last time. Have you considered my suggestion back then? Are you willing to exchange the pernight ore with me? Chapter 2461. In exchange, not only will I give you an ocean's worth of cultivation resources and heavenly resources, but I will also protect you from all disturbances so that you can cultivate in peace, said the heaven-splitting ancestor calmly. He did not show any emotion at all. Senior, are you chasing us away? Ziyun's heart sank slightly. My patience is limited, said the heaven-splitting ancestor. However, right after the heaven-splitting ancestor said that the artifact spirit of the Azure Poseidon Palace said eagerly, Exchange! We're willing to exchange. In the form of a short old man, it was filled with great fear and dread towards the heaven-splitting ancestor. All right, I'll go prepare the items. In 3 days, I'll exchange with you. The heaven-splitting ancestor was in a great mood. He laughed aloud before vanishing without a trace. He had already left the Azure Poseidon Palace. Only after the heaven-splitting ancestor left did the artifact spirit of the Azure Poseidon Palace reveal a bitter expression. It said to Xiao Man helplessly, Little Master, we have no other choice. If we don't agree to the heaven-splitting ancestor's conditions, we can't stay here any longer. Little Master, you should still remember what happened several years ago, right? Without the heaven-splitting ancestor's deterrence, those greedy peak experts of the Azure Poseidon Palace would have swarmed over. The defenses of the Azure Poseidon Palace are very powerful, but they're not invincible. Once we fall into their hands, it'll be very difficult for us to regain our freedom. Something even more severe might happen. However, the heaven-splitting ancestor is different. The Azure Poseidon Palace is not enough to catch the attention of an expert like the heaven-splitting ancestor. What the heaven-splitting ancestor truly cares about is the pernight ore on the 8th floor of the Azure Poseidon Palace. As a result, the heaven-splitting ancestor definitely won't do anything to harm us. But he didn't bring big brother Jianshin with him. Xiao Man was unwilling to accept this. The artifact spirit of the Poseidon Palace sighed and said earnestly, Young Master, you still don't understand. What we need to consider now is not Jianshin's safety, but our own safety. We can't afford to offend the heaven-splitting ancestor. He can even come and go as he pleases in the Tsang Poseidon Palace. If he wants to take the pernight gold by force, there's nothing we can do to stop him. If it were not for the pride and dignity of supreme experts at his level of cultivation, coupled with the fact that the little master is basically no different from a 3-year-old in the eyes of the heaven-splitting ancestor, and the fact that the heaven-splitting ancestor disdains to steal from a child due to his status, the Pernite or probably wouldn't have survived until now. All in all, since the heaven-splitting ancestor wants the Pernite ore, it's impossible for us to keep it. Even if the Tsang Poseidon Palace ends up in the hands of other peak experts, they can only offer up the Pernite or obediently. At the end of the day, it's still because we're too weak. Xiaoman, once we exchange cultivation resources with senior heaven-splitting, we need to work hard to increase our strength. Without enough strength, we'll be restricted everywhere in this world. Ziyun sighed gently as her gaze became extremely determined. She had obtained the legacy of a chaotic prime in the Poseidon Palace, so she already stood on an extremely high starting point. All she lacked now was hard work and cultivation resources. Time passed silently. Unknowingly, a year and a half had already passed since the disturbance on the desolate plain. In a certain region of the vast outer space of the Saints' world, a colossal spatial battleship flew through the starlight extremely quickly and silently. It moved through the sea of stars. At this moment, Jianchen slowly opened his eyes as he cultivated in a secret room within the spatial battleship. He looked at the jade bottle beside him. Just when he was about to pick it up, he suddenly hesitated. Gusta's essence blood is very difficult to refine. Absorbing a single droplet will take me half a year. Now, I only have 2 droplets left. With the size of my chaotic Niden, I won't be able to reach the 14th layer even if I absorb all the remaining 2 droplets. Whatever, I'll keep the 2 droplets for now. I'll find an opportunity to exchange them for some 5-colored divine crystals in the future. Gusta is one of the most powerful experts below Grand Exalts. His essence blood is naturally priceless. I just happen to need quite a lot of 5-colored divine crystals when I go to the Saint Plane. When he thought up to there, Jianchen immediately stowed the jade bottle away. Afterwards, he held Gusta's fleshly core in his hand and began to absorb the energy and vital essence within the fleshly core. The energy within the fleshly core was extremely terrifying and powerful. It could not be compared to the energy within a droplet of essence blood. After all, the fleshly core was equivalent to the chaotic Niden in Jianchen's dantian. It was the source of Gusta's power. As a result, Jianchen was especially careful when he absorbed the energy within the fleshly core. He only absorbed a tiny sliver at a time. However, even a tiny sliver was extremely tremendous to him. He needed to spend quite a lot of time to refine it completely. Time passed slowly. Jianchen needed even more time to break through from the 13th layer to the 14th layer than before. In the blink of an eye, Jianchen had already spent 10 years cultivating in the spatial battleship. During that time, he did not take a single step out of the cabin. He spent all his time cultivating. Even when the spatial battleship was attacked by space beasts and shook violently, it did not interrupt Jianchen's cultivation. With the fleshly core in hand, Jianchen was extremely determined to break through to the 14th layer. He would either succeed or die trying. Finally, after 10 years, a powerful pulse of energy suddenly erupted from Jianchen's cabin. The formations that Jianchen had cast down in the past were as fragile as tofu before the pulse of energy. They shattered in a single moment. Like a storm, the energy expanded with a pressure and struck the walls of the cabin. Immediately, the walls flickered with the light of formations, sealing the energy within the cabin and preventing it from spreading outside. This was the defensive formation of the spatial battleship. It was extremely powerful. Although the storm of energy was very powerful, the formations still managed to block it easily. As Jianchen's cabin was a high-level cabin, there were several secret rooms. Jianchen's room was only one of them. At this moment, Kea suddenly opened her eyes in another secret room. She looked in Jianchen's direction with shining eyes as a smile gradually appeared on her face. She murmured, "Jianchen has broken through again." Afterwards, Kea seemed to think of something. She became gloomy and said in low spirits, "Jianshin is getting stronger and stronger, but it's very difficult for me to make any progress. I always feel like there's a mysterious power stopping me, preventing me from reaching higher levels." Sigh. With a gentle sigh, Kea stood up and left the cabin. Jianshin had already ended his cultivation outside. He emerged from his room and stood in the living room of the cabin. At this moment, his bearing was completely different from before. This was a metamorphosis of life, a refinement of his vital energies. After 10 years of seclusion, his chaotic body had finally reached the 14th layer. His strength had reached a whole new level. Chapter 2462. The 13th layer of the chaotic body was equivalent to an early infinite prime, but his battle prowess had reached the level of a mid-infinite prime. Of course, mid-infinite primes were split into 3 smaller realms, which were the 4th heavenly layer, the 5th heavenly layer, and the 6th heavenly layer. He needed to find an opponent to battle to determine exactly which heavenly layer of infinite prime his current battle prowess was. Infinite primes can be regarded as experts in the saints' world. On any plane, they're people of status. Even in peak organizations that stand at the apex of a plane, infinite primes have quite the right to speak, Jianshin said. Jianshin was in a great mood. Even though he knew that his current strength was nothing special in the eyes of grand primes, at the very least his ability to stay alive had become greater when he faced such experts. Jianshin will be arriving on the Star Brilliance plane in 5 years. Kea walked over and said to Jianshin. Jianshin sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed down his excitement from his breakthrough. After hearing Kea's words, he sank into his thoughts before saying, "I've kept 2 droplets of Gusta's essence blood. I plan on exchanging them for some 5-colored divine crystals once we arrive on the Star Brilliance plane. Moreover, I still have a few god artifacts from the space ring of the Grand Prime I obtained from the Azure Poseidon Palace. With my current strength, I don't have to worry about exposing these god artifacts. I plan on auctioning them off on the Star Brilliance plane. Once we have enough 5-colored divine crystals, we'll immediately head to the Shenzhou plane and return the Inata Tower to the heavenly palace of Bixing." Teleportation formations were the only way for Jianshin to travel to the Shenzhou plane because the journey was just too far. It was impossible for him to spend over 10,000 years traveling on a spatial battleship. As long as we return the Inata Tower to the heavenly palace of Bixing, all the problems you face right now will be resolved. At that time, we won't have to hide our identities anymore. Kea was eager as well. Jianshin nodded. He had helped the heavenly palace of Bixing find the Inata Tower that had been lost for many years. This was a great merit. At that time, even if the heaven-splitting ancestor wanted to touch him, he would have to consider the first Majesty Exion's reaction. Most importantly, he possessed enough strength to return to the Cloud Plane. The Cloud Plane. It's been so many years. I wonder how the Tianyuan family is doing. And there's also the vice leader of the heavenly demon religion, Huayan. I was forced into a corner by him in the past, forcing me to leave the Cloud Plane. Now that I've completely surpassed him, it's time for me to get my revenge. Jianshin thought. As soon as he thought about how he and Kea were forced to flee the Cloud Plane from Huayan's pursuit, he became filled with uncontainable fury and killing intent. Even though he already knew that the great elder of the heavenly demon religion was Emotianyan, he still had to get to the bottom of his grievances with Huayan. Oh right, I heard that the members of quite a few large clans on the Jade Spring Plain are on the spatial battleship as well. They seem to be hurrying to the Star Brilliance plane to participate in some sort of grand event. Perhaps we can auction off a god artifact on the spatial battleship, Kei suddenly said at this moment. I want 5-colored divine crystals. Only primordial realm experts possess 5-colored divine crystals. If it's a divine king, even if they come from large clans, they might not necessarily possess 5-colored divine crystals, Jianshin said. The members of those large clans are actually going to the grand event on the Star Brilliance plane to offer gifts. They might even have 5-colored divine crystals on them, said Jianqin. In the past few years, Jianqin had remained in seclusion, but she had moved about the spatial battleship frequently, so she had heard quite a lot. Jianqin considered it and said, "All right then, I'll auction off a god artifact. If we can gather enough 5-colored divine crystals on the spatial battleship, that would obviously be for the best." Afterwards, Jianqin and Kea left the cabin and made their way towards the auction. The spatial battleship was extremely large, and it used the laws of space. It possessed the wonders of the Sumeru mustard seed. As a result, it was normal for a spatial battleship to hold several million people. It was complete with various facilities. It was basically a different kind of city. Before long, Jianqin arrived at the largest store on the spatial battleship. There were all sorts of items displayed in the merchant house. At a glance, there was a dazzling array of items, causing the entire merchant house to be filled with the aura of jewels and treasures. Many cultivators were wandering around, choosing what they needed. "I want to see your shopkeeper. I have a great deal to discuss." Jianqin tossed out a few supreme grade divine crystals as soon as he entered the store and said to a worker. The worker saw how Jianqin possessed an extraordinary bearing and how generous he was, so he immediately dared not tarry. After greeting Jianqin, he immediately went to invite the shopkeeper. Very soon, a capable middle-aged man walked out. Under the guidance of the worker, he arrived before Jianqin. "I am Yu Qin, the person in charge of this store. May I ask how I should address you?" The middle-aged man clasped his fist at Jianqin in a friendly manner. He vaguely gave off the pressure of the Divine King as he studied Jianqin and Kea secretly. However, when he discovered that he was unable to see through Jianqin and Kea at all, and that the two of them remained unfazed by the pressure he had unintentionally released, he immediately became stern. Jianqin did not answer. With a flip of his hand, a 2-handed sword appeared. He said, "I plan on auctioning this. Are you interested?" The moment the 2-handed greatsword appeared, the entire merchant house was immediately filled with multicolored light. The numerous dazzling treasures were all overshadowed by the light emitted by the 2-handed greatsword. Moreover, the pressure that belonged to a god artifact permeated the store as well, shocking the souls of everyone present. For a moment, everyone in the store was drawn away by the light from the sword. This is Yu Qin, the person in charge of this building, widened his eyes. He stared at the 2-handed great sword in shock, and his expression became blank for an instant. However, he returned to his senses soon after. Ignoring his shock, he immediately took out a piece of canvas to cover the sword. His canvas was also a treasure. It was of high quality and had the ability to conceal one's aura. Under the cover of the canvas, the light from the sword and the pressure that belonged to a god artifact immediately vanished. It was completely hidden. "Fellows, please come in. Please come in. We'll talk in the VIP room." Immediately, Yu Qin became excited. His eyes burned with desire as he became even more enthusiastic. He invited Jianqin and Kea to a VIP room with a better environment. A god artifact. That's a god artifact. Someone wants to auction off a god artifact. This is shocking news. Heavens, that's a god artifact. I heard that even many primordial realm experts don't possess one. Chapter 2463. At this moment, the person in charge of the business, Yu Qin, sat before Jianqin and Kea in a luxuriously decorated VIP room on the highest floor of the business. "This sword is a low-quality god artifact. Brother, do you really plan on auctioning this god artifact off?" All of the formations in the VIP room had been activated, concealing everything inside. Yu Qin was currently holding a huge sword with both hands, stroking it lovingly with a scorching gaze. His expression was one of infatuation and intoxication. From the looks of it, it was as if he was caressing his most beloved object. Jianqin nodded slightly and said indifferently, I want to use this god artifact to exchange for 5-colored divine crystals. Remember, I only want 5-colored divine crystals." Yu Chen's heart shuddered when he heard that. He thought, 5-colored divine crystals are something that only primordial realm experts can use when they cultivate, and they're used for teleportation formations. Is this person a primordial realm expert who's been keeping a low profile? Although he had such thoughts in his heart, Yu Chen's expression did not change as he immediately agreed. Even his attitude had become even more respectful. He was unable to determine Jianshin's strength, but when he saw Jianshin take out a god artifact so casually, he understood that even if Jianshin was not a primordial realm expert, he still possessed an extremely shocking background. Afterwards, Jianshin and Yu Chen discussed some more details before leaving the god artifact in the business. He left with Kea and returned to the cabin. Before long, the news of a god artifact being auctioned off spread across the entire spatial battleship under the great efforts of the business. It immediately threw the spatial battleship into an uproar, leading to a great uproar. After all, basically all the cultivators on the spatial battleship were at godhood. There were probably only a handful of primordial realm cultivators. Now that a god artifact that even some primordial realm cultivators did not possess had actually been tossed into the hands of a group of godhood cultivators, it naturally made countless godhood cultivators go crazy over it. What did you say? A low-quality god artifact is about to be auctioned off? A young man's voice rang out from an extremely luxurious cabin in the upper levels of the spatial battleship. A god artifact has actually appeared. Fantastic. Our clan just happens to not have anything too eye-catching as a gift for the young Star Lord's Millennium Birthday celebration. So let's use this god artifact as a gift for the young Star Lord. Elder He, we have to obtain this god artifact. Someone investigate who sold this god artifact. This time, the young Star Lord of the Star Brilliance Plane, Chenyan, has given away a god artifact. That's much better than the gift we prepared. Although a god artifact is nothing with the young Star Lord's identity and status, it's enough to make our clan proud. A domineering voice rang out from another luxurious cabin. Young Master Wei, the person who sold the god artifact, specifically asked for 5-colored divine crystals. Aside from using teleportation formations, 5-colored divine crystals are also used by primordial realm experts for cultivation. It's extremely likely that the seller is a primordial realm expert, so it's best if we don't provoke them. The 5-colored divine crystals on me are nowhere near enough to buy a low-quality god artifact. An old man smiled bitterly. How can there be so many primordial realm experts on this spatial battleship? Moreover, how many primordial realm experts are willing to sell god artifacts? Go investigate the exact location of this person on the spatial battleship, and then buy the god artifact for a low price in the name of our clan, said the young man known as Young Master Wei. At the same time, 6 old men sat in the air in a hall at the very top of the spatial battleship. Every single one of their presences was tremendous, and their ancient bodies possessed extremely great power. It was as if every single move they made possessed the power to overturn clouds and rain. The 6 old men were the protectors of the spatial battleship. They were the peak figures who watched over the spatial battleship, ensuring its safety. They were all infinite primes. Interesting. Someone actually wants to auction off a god artifact here. One of the 6 old men said with interest. The person auctioning off the god artifact lives in a high-class cabin. He shouldn't be a primordial realm expert. This is because all primordial realm experts, even those who have just broken through, will be given the right to live in a luxurious cabin for free on a spatial battleship. However, the person auctioning off the god artifact has used supreme grade divine crystals to buy a high-class cabin. From this, he should be a divine king, said another old man. With a single thought, he investigated everything about Jianshin when he boarded the spatial battleship. The light of excitement immediately flickered through the eyes of the burly primordial realm expert among the 6 old men. He sniggered. This god artifact is a huge sword. It's perfect for old men, just happens to not have a god artifact yet. So this god artifact will be his for sure. As he said that, a huge sword appeared in his hand. The sword was similar to Jianshin's god artifact, except it was only a supreme quality saint artifact. Although the old man was an infinite prime, he did not have a god artifact either. You've been a subject of the Float Empire on the Jade Fluid Plane for far too short a time. You've done far too little merit. In another few tens of thousand years, you should be able to exchange for a low-quality god artifact with your merit, said a companion beside him. The burly old man shook his head and said, Tens of thousands of years is a little too long. If I spend so much time in the starry sky, fighting against the starry sky all year round, who knows when I will fall? It's better to get this divine tool as soon as possible. The stronger I am, the better I can live and the further I can go. With that, the burly old man stood up and said, I'll personally go find that person and buy the god artifact from him before it's auctioned off. Otherwise, once it's auctioned off, I probably won't be able to obtain a god artifact with what little I have. Fa Yin, you're a subject of the Float Empire. This spatial battleship is the property of the Float Empire, and there are rules set down by the Float Empire as well. You better not break the rules and make things difficult for us. I know my limits. The disturbance from the auction of the god artifact continued to brew. A few people of extraordinary origins had already discovered Jianshin's cabin through various methods. As a result, people constantly came to visit Jianshin's cabin. Most of them possessed great backgrounds, and they directly expressed that they wanted to buy the god artifact from Jianshin privately or use other heavenly resources to exchange for it. Jianshin did not turn down these people's visits. I only want 5 colored divine crystals. I don't need anything else apart from 5 colored divine crystals. Within the cabin, Jianshin said the same thing to a middle-aged man who had come to visit him countless times already. Sir, we don't have 5 colored divine crystals right now, but the seniors of our Myriad Water Manor have quite a few. You should at least know of the Myriad Water Manor on the Jade Fluid Plane, right? That's a renowned great power. You can hand over the divine artifact to us first. Not long after, the seniors of our Myriad Water Manor will rush over to the Star Brilliance Plane and hand over the 5-colored divine crystal to you. They'll give you 5-colored divine crystals, said a middle-aged man before Jianshin. His voice was gentle, but it was filled with undisguised arrogance. I won't be seeing you off. Jianshin made a gesture of invitation without any further discussion. He directly asked the man to leave. Chapter 2464. I only accept 5-colored divine crystals. If you can't take out enough 5-colored divine crystals right now, please leave. Jianshin stressed once again. He showed no mercy at all, leaving no room for negotiation. The middle-aged man from the Myriad Water Estate was immediately angered. Coldness filled his eyes. Sir, are you looking down on our Myriad Water Estate? Uncle, please, Kea said indifferently as he stood to one side. He made an inviting gesture. Jianshin remained seated with his eyes closed. He said nothing more and did not move at all. Humph. The middle-aged man glanced past Jianshin with a sharp gaze. He snorted coldly and left in a huff. The rules of the spatial battleship were strict. Apart from the ring, all forms of fighting were forbidden. Even a peak organization like the Myriad Water Estate was unwilling to break the rules set down by the famed Float Empire on the Jade Fluid Plane so easily. Jianshin, looks like the results aren't ideal. Kea sat down before Jianshin after the middle-aged man left. He looked at Jianshin, who had his eyes closed, and sighed gently. There's only a handful of primordial realm experts on the spatial battleship, and 5-colored divine crystals are usually in the hands of primordial realm experts. There's naturally a certain level of difficulty if we hope that the Divine King can pay enough, Jianshin said slowly. He knew just how precious five-colored divine crystals were. Back on the cloud plane, in order to obtain enough five-colored divine crystals to return to the moon god hall, Fairy Hayua had even personally taken action to deal with a powerful opponent for someone else. As a result, five-colored divine crystals were extremely precious even to primordial realm experts. I still have a few god artifacts on me. Originally, I planned on selling a few more to exchange for some five-colored divine crystals, but it looks like that was just wishful thinking. Now, we can only wait for the auction to begin. I hope the infinite primes on the spatial battleship don't disappoint me, Jianqin said gently. He closed his eyes and did not move at all. He was like an old monk meditating. Before long, there was a sudden flash before Jianqin. An extremely burly, 3-meter-tall old man silently appeared before Jianqin. The old man was particularly huge, basically a tiny giant. Even Jianqin felt insignificant before him. The old man studied Jianqin, and the light in his eyes flickered. He, old man Fa Yin, a subject of the Float Empire. He's one of the protectors of the spatial battleship. Jianqin slowly opened his eyes. He stared at Fa Yin calmly and said, "You must have come for the god artifacts as well. Do you have enough five-colored divine crystals?" "Of course, old man has five-colored divine crystals," Fa Yin chuckled. With a flip of his hand, a huge gourd that was half a meter tall appeared in his hand. He said to Jianqin, "This gourd contains wine personally brewed by old man. He used 999 precious heavenly resources and spent 1,000 years to brew it. It's old man's proudest work. Come, have a taste of old man's wine first, and then we can slowly talk about the god artifacts." Before Jianqin could agree, Fa Yin waved his hand, and the huge gourd of wine immediately flew towards Jianqin. Rather than fly, it was better to say smash, because the gourd of wine moved just too quickly. Anyone would think that it was smashing towards Jianqin. Moreover, the wine gourd secretly contained a powerful ripple of energy. Although it did not contain any killing intent, it was enough to make any divine king suffer a great loss, causing them to be covered in dust and grime. Fa Yun clearly wanted to test Jianqin's strength with this move. Jianqin's expression did not change. He extended his right hand unhurriedly, but he moved extremely quickly. He caught the wine gourd firmly in his hand, and then he patted the gourd gently. Immediately, a stream of wine as thick as a finger shot out, landing in his mouth with great precision. From the beginning to the end, Jianqin did not stand up at all. He sat there without moving at all. His expression was the same as before. Fa Yun's eyes immediately narrowed when he saw this. Good wine. It really is 1,000-year-old brew. Jianqin praised from the bottom of his heart. He patted the gourd gently again, and immediately the gourd of wine flew towards Fa Yun at the same speed. Clearly, it was returning to its owner. However, when Fa Yun caught the gourd of wine, his eyes immediately shone resplendently. His body shuddered violently, and he almost lost control of his body due to being caught off guard. The primordial realm. Fa Yun cried out as surprise appeared on his face. His gaze towards Jianqin underwent an overwhelming change. Now that you've drunk the wine, let's talk about the price. May I ask how many five-colored divine crystals you're willing to pay for my god artifact? Jianqin asked. You sure have hidden yourself well. I never thought that a primordial realm expert like you would actually lower yourself to stay in a high-class cabin. How surprising, Fa Yun said. After learning that Jianqin was a primordial realm expert, he immediately changed his attitude. Although he had yet to probe Jianqin's strength, just the fact that he was a primordial realm expert was enough for him to treat him as an equal. Fa Yin sat down slowly before Jianqin. However, even when he sat down, Jianqin needed to raise his head slightly to meet his gaze. I have over 500 five-colored divine crystals on me right now, said Fa Yun after a moment of hesitation. Jianqin frowned slightly when he heard that. He said rather sternly, "Only 500? That's nowhere near enough. A low-quality god artifact is worth far more than that." Fa Yun fell silent. Originally, he planned on using his identity as a primordial realm expert to pressure Jianqin and purchase the god artifact from Jianqin at a low price. However, he never thought that Jianqin would actually be a primordial realm expert as well. Clearly, his previous plan was no longer feasible. "Then I'll find a way to gather some more 5-colored divine crystals." With that, Fa Yun directly left. In the next few days, the number of people who came to visit Jianqin gradually decreased. Everyone knew that Jianqin was stubborn and only wanted 5-colored divine crystals. There was no room for negotiation, so they naturally stopped coming. Of course, Jianqin had offended quite a few people in the past few days. There were even a few people with great backgrounds who directly threatened him with words. Fa Yun did not come to visit Jianqin again in the next few days. In the blink of an eye, the day of the auction arrived. The god artifact that Jianqin had taken out shone with dazzling light as it was placed in the center of the auction. It was protected by a powerful formation to prevent people from stealing it. A sea of people filled the surroundings of the auction. All of them stared at the god artifact with undisguised desire and desire. Jianqin and Kea arrived in the VIP boxes specially prepared for them. They paid close attention to the happenings of the auction. Moreover, all the important people on the spatial battleship had arrived as well. They sat in different VIP boxes. "Jianqin, I feel like the auction this time won't go very smoothly. Some people might secretly interfere." Kea sat before Jianqin in the VIP box and said with some worry, "Let's wait and see." Jianqin remained calm. He was already a primordial realm expert now, and he was not as weak as someone who had just reached the primordial realm. He had enough confidence to face everything. Chapter 2465. Kea immediately calmed down when he heard how confident Jianqin was and how he did not fear any challenge. Indeed, Jianqin had broken through and become even more powerful now. He was a peak expert on the spatial battleship, so there was no need for him to fear too much here. That was because strength was the supreme law that determined everything. In the face of great strength, all schemes and trajectories were useless. At the same time, the primordial realm experts who served as the protectors of the spatial battleship gathered together on the highest floor of the spatial battleship. They sat in the air and also paid close attention to everything that happened in the auction. To no surprise, the burly Fa Yin was among them. I never thought that person would actually be a primordial realm expert. It's a pity that he's purposefully hiding it, so we can't see through his strength. Fa Yun, did you manage to probe him? An old man asked. Fa Yun, who was sitting cross-legged like a small mountain, gently shook his head and said, "That was a simple test. I couldn't see his exact cultivation level, but I felt that he wasn't weaker than me." In other words, that person is a second heavenly layer infinite prime at the very least. Since he's a primordial realm expert, Fa Yun, you probably won't be able to buy the god artifact at a low price. Fa Yun smiled mysteriously when he heard that. He said, "It's not just old man who wants the god artifact. The disciples of large clans have already interfered secretly. With the influence of their clans, they've controlled the auction. The price of the god artifact won't be too high this time, which just happens to give me an opportunity. However, I'll probably need to borrow some 5-colored divine crystals from everyone first. Yeah, no matter how low the price is, it can't be too low. It would be fine if it was the divine king with no background, but he's a primordial realm expert. After all, the protectors of the spatial battleship were all very cautious before a primordial realm expert. None of them were willing to offend him for just a few 5-colored divine crystals. At this time, the auction had officially begun. On the stage of the auction venue, a coquettish and charming young woman was standing on the stage, carefully introducing each of the auction treasures. causing many cultivators below to bid for them. As the final item of the auction, god artifacts were naturally placed at the very end. As a result, the items auctioned earlier were all items that Primordial Realm experts would not be interested in at all. They were only useful to godhood cultivators. But even so, every time a product appeared, there would be a large number of Deity realm martial artists fighting over it. The scene was very lively. Within the VIP box, Jianchen's heart was as calm as still water. He sat cross-legged and quietly waited. He did not participate in the competition for any of the goods, because these things were already useless to him. The other private rooms in the auction hall were also waiting and did not participate in the bidding for these goods. They only had a single objective for this trip, and that was to obtain a low-rank god artifact that had appeared in this auction. Finally, after 3 days of the auction, it was time for the auction to begin. Everyone, we will be auctioning off the final item of the auction, a low-quality god artifact. With that, the entire auction site immediately fell silent. At that moment, everyone held their breaths as their eyes shone with scorching light. It's said that many infinite primes don't even have a god artifact in the Saints' world. That's more than enough to show just how valuable a god artifact is. Its value can even be described as immeasurable. It's truly a priceless treasure. The auctioneer stood on the stage and said excitedly. Her bell-like voice was very infectious, causing the blood of all the godhood cultivators to flow faster. This god artifact can only be auctioned using 5-colored divine crystals. Because god artifacts are just too valuable, if we set a reserve price for them, it'll probably damage their reputation. As a result, the auction for this god artifact will be rather different from the other items. There will be no reserve price for it. That's because only then can it truly be called a priceless treasure and not damage the reputation of god artifacts. What? It can only be auctioned using 5-colored divine crystals? Where are we supposed to find 5-colored divine crystals? That's far too unfair. Why can't we only use 5-colored divine crystals? Can't we use supreme grade divine crystals? With that, the auction hall immediately fell into an uproar. Not all the cultivators had come into contact with Gentian before, so they naturally did not know that only 5-colored divine crystals could be used to bid for the god artifact. Now that they had suddenly heard that, the cultivators who had already prepared large amounts of supreme grade divine crystals and various treasures naturally struggled to accept it. Jianchin slowly opened his eyes at this moment as well. His face sank slightly, and a sliver of coldness flashed through his eyes. He said, "No reserve price? Doesn't that mean that if no one bids for the god artifact, it'll be purchased at an extremely low price in the end?" Caillou became angered as well. She said furiously, "It must be the doing of those large clans. Right now, I'm just worried that those large clans are colluding with each other and secretly coming to an agreement where only one person can buy the god artifact." The Darkness clan of the central region of the Jade Fluid Plain bids 10 5-colored divine crystals. At this moment, a loud voice rang out from a VIP box. From the sound of it, it was a young man. He directly announced his origins. The Darkness clan of the Jade Fluid Plain is a peak clan that you can't afford to offend. I heard that the bloodline of darkness that originates from the ancient times flows through the Darkness clan. This bloodline of darkness allows them to possess a great advantage in comprehending the laws of darkness. They're born kings of the darkness. The Darkness clan is a clan famed for assassination. They're very powerful. In the auction hall, low voices of discussion could be heard. Ever since the person from the Darkness clan bid, a second bid had not occurred in the huge auction hall for a very long time. 10 5-colored divine crystals. Jianchin murmured. As expected, the large clans had indeed come to an agreement secretly. They would not bid against each other, so the price of the god artifact would not increase. In the end, they would obtain the god artifact at an extremely low price. As for how the god artifact would be distributed and who it would end up in, that was not something Genshin cared about. The Darkness clan bids 10 5-colored divine crystals. Are there any higher bids? 10 5-colored divine crystals going once. The auctioneer's voice rang out. That's an extremely precious god artifact. Don't tell me someone will buy it for 10 5-colored divine crystals, just like that. 10 5-colored divine crystals are equivalent to 10 million supreme grade divine crystals, which is 10 blocks. 10 blocks of supreme grade divine crystals can buy a god artifact. Isn't this god artifact a little too cheap? God damn it. If it weren't for the fact that we can't exchange for 5-colored divine crystals here, I would be able to take out several dozen of them casually. I would have the right to bid for this god artifact as well. All the godhood cultivators in the auction hall felt extremely regretful. They felt that it was a pity that the god artifact was so cheap. Originally, they thought that the god artifact would be pushed to an astounding price, but they never expected that it would only be 10 5-colored divine crystals in the end. This price was not even 1/100th of the god artifact's price. 10 5-colored divine crystals going twice. Are there any more bids? The auctioneer's voice rang out once again. It was filled with powerlessness. The infinite primes gathered on the top floor of the spatial battleship all shook their heads. The Darkness clan is just too vicious. That's a god artifact. Yet they only bid 10 5-colored divine crystals. That's basically insulting the value of a god artifact. The Darkness clan has gone a little too far. Chapter 2466. However, F.A. Yun remained silent. He frowned as the light in his eyes flickered as if he was conflicted. As a primordial realm expert, he still used a supreme quality saint artifact. Now that a god artifact had appeared, and it was the two-handed sword that he was most proficient with, it was something that he yearned for even in his dreams. He had already made up his mind to obtain it. This was because if he possessed a god artifact, his strength would directly skyrocket, and his battle prowess would skyrocket. At the same time, he was prepared to bid against the large clans on the spatial battleship. Although those large clans were famous on the Jade Fluid Plane, F.A. Yin also had the Float dynasty behind him. As a consecrator of the Float dynasty, he was not afraid of the younger generation of those large clans. This was because the peak organizations would never offend a primordial realm expert for a low-quality god artifact. However, he had never thought that the bidders would actually be from the Darkness clan. The Darkness clan was an organization that ranked third on the Jade Fluid Plane. They were even more powerful than the Float Empire, which ranked fourth. Everyone in the clan was skilled in the laws of darkness, and every single one of them was an expert assassin. They were truly lawless on the Jade Fluid Plane, and they were not to be trifled with. F.A. Yin did not fear the juniors of the other peak clans due to his status as a subject of the Float Empire, but that did not include the Darkness clan. F.A. Yin, do you still want to bid for this god artifact? A companion who was also a primordial realm expert asked from beside F.A. Yin. F.A. Yin was silent. He was having a battle in his heart. The Darkness clan was not a clan that was reasonable. Once he bid, he would directly offend the Darkness clan. At this moment, several people of various ages gathered in the viewing box of the Darkness clan. The person at the center seemed to be in his 20s. He was handsome and possessed quite the bearing. The young man was the leader of the Darkness clan. Although he was only an early divine king, his status was extremely great. This was because he was the 13th son of the current patriarch of the Darkness clan, Anya Juyo. Anya Juyo had been exceptionally talented since he was young. In just 5,000 years, he had reached the early divine king realm. He was the brightest new star of the Darkness clan, and he was greatly valued. Young Master Juyo, looks like this god artifact belongs to you. Young Master Juyo has created another glorious era by purchasing a low-grade god artifact for 10 5-colored divine crystals. A middle-aged man by Anya Juyo's side spoke with a smile and was extremely flattering. Anya, Juyo's expression was calm. There was no sadness or joy. It was as if this matter was insignificant to him. He said in a cold voice, "The people of the families on the Jade Spring Stream are quite tactful. Young Master Nine Nether is the future leader of the Darkness clan. Those people wouldn't dare offend young Master Nine Nether, even if they had the guts." The middle-aged man flattered. Hearing that, the old man sitting opposite him opened his eyes. He glanced at the middle-aged man with great disgust and said, "I'm afraid the owner of this god artifact won't let this go so easily." Anya Joyo's eyes turned cold. He said, "So what? I followed the rules of the auction house and bought it through the proper bidding. If he has any objections, he can come and find me." "Young Master Juyo, have you considered the possibility that we were wrong, and the person's true cultivation isn't the Divine King, but a primordial realm expert?" The old man said sternly, "So what if he's a primordial realm expert? The primordial realm experts who stay in the high-class cabins are usually the most useless primordial realm experts. If he has any objections, he can come and find me," Anya Juyo said arrogantly. He did not take the other party seriously at all. The old man sighed gently and thought, "If he's the Divine King, then so be it. I can just kill him. But if he's a primordial realm expert, offending a primordial realm expert for a low-grade god artifact is not a wise decision." Anyajo paused, and he sneered, "Moreover, I don't think he's bold enough to do that. Even the organizations that rank first and second on the Jade Fluid Plane have to show respect to our Darkness clan." However, as soon as Anyajuyo finished speaking, a voice rang out. "Hold on. This god artifact isn't for sale for less than 5,000 five-colored divine crystals." Jianchen spoke from within the VIP box. His voice was very calm, but it rang through the entire auction center. It was filled with determination that left no room for doubt. How could he allow a low-quality god artifact of his to be bought by someone else for a mere 10 five-colored divine crystals? When his voice rang out, it immediately caused the auction hall to become completely silent. Even the host on the stage was stunned. This was because Jianchen's determination left no room for doubt. He had even ignored the rules of the auction. This was because the price of any item would be set by the auction. Even if the seller had a request, it would have to be made before the auction began. It would not change the price the moment the item was about to be sold. This was completely against the rules of the auction. Anya Joyo's face sank in the VIP box of the Darkness clan. A sliver of coldness appeared in his eyes. "I remember this voice. It's the person who took out the god artifact," said the middle-aged man who was trying to flatter Anya Juyo. "Humph." Anya Juyo snorted coldly and said with a heavy voice, "My Darkness clan has already bid. Fellow, you just have to raise the price after we bid. Are you trying to make things difficult for my Darkness clan? Moreover, the auction has its own rules. Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't break the rules here." Rules? Are the rules of the auction not to set a reserve price and to work with others to buy items at an extremely low price? If these are the rules of the auction, is there any need to follow them? Will anyone still be bold enough to take out their items for auction in the future? Jianchen said sternly. With that, a buzz immediately rang out in the auction center. Everyone whispered to each other. Their words were filled with criticism towards the auction. The scene before their eyes was obvious to all. An extremely precious divine artifact had actually only been bid up to 10 five-colored divine crystals before no one else dared to bid for it. Wasn't this clearly being manipulated by someone, so how could it be fair? 5,000 five-colored divine crystals is the reserve price for this god artifact. Everyone is free to continue bidding. Jianchen's voice rang out again. He ignored the auction and the Darkness clan, setting down his own rules. How bold of him! He actually doesn't even fear the Darkness clan. The middle-aged man who had threatened Jianchen a few days ago murmured softly in the VIP box of the Myriad Water Manor. "It's very likely that he's at the primordial realm," said the old man before Audiobook. Chapter 2467. Currently, a skinny old man in black robes sat in an extremely luxurious cabin filled with luxury items within the spatial battleship. This old man had an ordinary appearance. He was the type that wouldn't attract any attention even if he was thrown into a crowd. His aura was restrained, making him look like a mortal at this moment. The skinny old man was the spectral elder that Audiobook had mentioned. He was an infinite prime of the Darkness clan, and he had accompanied Audiobook to the Star Brilliance plane this time. He was responsible for Audiobook's safety. Opposite the spectral elder was the old man who had accompanied Audiobook earlier. He stood there respectfully and passed on Audiobook's words to the spectral elder, word for word. Jiyo wants the person who auctioned the god artifact to die. After knowing the cause and effect, the spectral elder slowly opened his eyes. His gaze was dim and devoid of any spirit. All of the light had been concealed. It was as if this person was a person who walked in the night all year round and was constantly hiding himself. Even now, with his ordinary appearance, it was very difficult for him to attract too much attention from others. At this moment, the spectral elder closed his eyes. The powerful senses of his soul extended towards the top floor of the spatial battleship. Before long, he opened his eyes again and said slowly, "The subjects of the Float Empire have already confirmed that the person who auctioned the god artifact is indeed a primordial realm expert. Jiyo has indeed been a little too reckless. Spectral Elder, what should we do then?" The old man asked politely. "Although Jiyo has been rather reckless, he's the most dazzling junior of the Darkness clan after all. It's extremely likely that he'll become the person who wields power in the Darkness clan in the future. Since he wants that person to die, I'll do it," the spectral elder said indifferently. It was as if assassinating primordial realm experts was nothing out of the ordinary in his eyes. Indeed, the people of the Darkness clan possessed the bloodline of darkness from the ancient times. They were born kings of the darkness. Every single one of them was an assassin, and they were most skilled at sneak attacks. Even if they encountered opponents more powerful than them, they could still die from a sudden sneak attack if they were careless. Even if their sneak attack failed, they could rely on their natural advantage to hide in the darkness and instantly disappear into nothingness, retreating unscathed. As a result, even though the Darkness clan ranked third on the Jade Fluid plane, the organizations that ranked first and second dared not provoke them carelessly. The members of the Darkness clan might not be the strongest in battle, but they were definitely the most difficult to deal with. Bang! At this moment, a heavy voice suddenly rang out, spreading through every inch of the spatial battleship. Afterwards, the entire spatial battleship shook violently, catching all the cultivators on the battleship off guard. They almost fell to the ground. In the auction hall, the numerous cultivators who had gathered here fell into a state of chaos. Shouts and curses rang out incessantly. The shaking of the ship was too violent, and the crowd in the auction hall was highly concentrated. Many people were caught off guard and bumped into the people next to them. The scene was chaotic. Space beasts are attacking. Everyone, return to your cabins immediately. The powerful senses of the soul swept over, and a thunderous voice rang out in the heads of all the cultivators on the spatial battleship. God damn it! Why have we come across space beasts again? How many waves has it been already? We've always been warned beforehand when we came across space beasts before. Why is it so late this time? Complaints rang out from all over the spatial battleship. All the cultivators who had gathered there returned to their cabins in an orderly manner as quickly as they could. Traveling through the starry sky wasn't smooth sailing. All along the way, they'd already experienced the attacks of space beasts numerous times. Thus, all of them were accustomed to it and weren't surprised by it. Boom! At this moment, another great rumble rang out. The spatial battleship shook violently as if it had suffered an extremely violent impact. This time, it was countless times more violent than before. It was as if the entire spatial battleship had been blown away. The powerful inertia caused all the cultivators to lose their footing. They all flew through the air, slamming heavily against the walls of the cabin. Many of them became bloodied from the fall. Everyone, return to your cabins immediately and pour energy into the formations. The great voice rang out from the top once again, echoing through every corner of the spatial battleship. It was stern. Every single spatial battleship was a flying fortress. Formations covered it, connecting it to every location. It was extremely powerful. Every cabin had a formation core that provided energy. When the spatial battleship was attacked, the cultivators on the spatial battleship could provide energy to the formations and fend off the attacks from the outside world. However, they would not do this every time they were attacked by space beasts. Only when the safety of the spatial battleship was threatened and the spatial battleship was unable to fend off the attacks with its own power would they borrow the power of all the cultivators on the spatial battleship. As a result, the hearts of all the cultivators on the spatial battleship sank when they heard that they needed to borrow their power. Everyone clearly realized that this time they might have really encountered a huge crisis. The ongoing auction had been forced to come to a halt. "Fellow, please move to the deck!" At the same time, an old voice rang out in Jianshin's head. It came from the top floor of the spatial battleship. A subject of the float empire sent a message to him. "Kea, let's go to the deck and take a look." Jianshin remained the same. He was extremely composed. Kea nodded. He left the VIP box with Jianshin and arrived on the deck of the spatial battleship. They could clearly see the boundless outer space as they stood on the deck. They could clearly see the stars that rapidly receded in the surroundings. However, the deck of the spatial battleship was currently surrounded by a large number of space beasts. These space beasts were several dozen meters long. Their skin was dazzling golden, and their appearances were extremely strange as well. They seemed like sharp swords. At this moment, many space beasts had gathered around the spatial battleship. They were wildly attacking the protective formations of the spatial battleship. Under the storm-like attacks, the extremely powerful formations on the spatial battleship constantly twisted and deformed. The power of the formations rapidly depleted. Moreover, deafening booms rang out, causing the entire spatial battleship to shake violently. It was like the entire spatial battleship had been knocked away. Chapter 2468. Golden Sword Beasts. They have no limbs and are shaped like arrows. Their bodies are extremely tough, and they can fly through outer space extremely quickly. They use the tip of their bodies to pierce their enemies. Information regarding these beasts flashed through Jianshin's head the moment he saw them. He was no longer an ignorant person anymore. Even though he did not know much about these beasts that lived in outer space, he did understand a thing or two about them. Golden Sword Beasts are a huge race. They move in groups every time, and there are many of them. Now that the spatial battleship has been trapped by the Golden Sword Beasts, it'll be very difficult to break free if we don't kill them. The spatial battleship is fast, but it'll be very difficult for it to be faster than the primordial realm existences among the Golden Sword Beasts. After all, these beasts are born in outer space, so they're basically like fish in water in outer space. Shaking them off won't be easy. Jianshin thought quickly and understood the situation very soon. Fellow, you must be aware of the current situation as well. The formations of the spatial battleship won't be able to last for too long. If we don't kill these Golden Sword Beasts, none of us will have an easy time once the formations run out of energy, Jianshin said. After all, the Golden Sword Beasts are astonishingly fast in outer space. Moreover, they have primordial realm experts equivalent to us. They can even catch up to the spatial battleship. Once we lose the spatial battleship, we'll never be able to shake off the Golden Sword Beasts with our strength. An old voice rang out. On the other side of the deck, the 6 primordial realm experts of the Float Empire gathered together. They frowned and were stern as they made their way towards Jianshin. The old man who spoke wore white robes. He had white hair and a ruddy complexion. He seemed rather sage-like. However, his 2 eyebrows that were as sharp as swords made him seem even sharper. 9th heavenly layer infinite prime. Jianshin's interest was piqued. He could already tell the old man's strength. He was the strongest among the 6 primordial realm experts, having reached the peak of infinite prime. As for the other 5 subjects of the Float Empire, they were much weaker than the old man. Clearly, they followed the old man's lead. Fa Yun, whom Jianshin had met a few days ago, was among them. Old man Yi Jian Pain, I hope you can take action and kill the golden sword beasts with us, the 9th heavenly layer infinite prime continued. He extended a sincere invitation. I can already sense 12 primordial realm presences among these golden sword beasts. One of them is probably close to chaotic prime. It'll be extremely difficult to kill them with just the few of us, said Jianshin. Don't worry, fellow. There are a few other primordial realm experts who will take action on the ship. They're already here, Yi Jian Pain said. As he spoke, 2 more people walked onto the deck. They were a middle-aged man with a medium build and an extremely handsome young man. Including Jianshin, there were already 9 primordial realm experts on the deck. 2 first heavenly layer infinite primes. Jianshin glanced past the 2 primordial realm experts and understood their strength with a single glance. He shook his head and sighed. It would be fine if the 2 first heavenly layer infinite primes possessed extraordinary battle prowess, but if they were only regular primordial realm experts, it would be very difficult for them to protect themselves. This was because golden sword beasts possessed greater battle prowess than cultivators at the same level of cultivation. As a result, only a few people with extraordinary battle prowess could deal with space beasts that possessed the same strength as them. Boom! At this moment, the spatial battleship shook violently again. The 12 primordial realm golden sword beasts that surrounded the ship all launched powerful attacks. Under the lead of the golden sword beast that was close to chaotic prime, the 12 attacks landed on the same spot on the spatial battleship. They possessed devastating power. The power of the strike had surpassed the level of infinite primes, reaching the level of chaotic primes. A huge crack immediately appeared on the formations of the spatial battleship from the attack. The formations rapidly dimmed as their defenses plummeted. I'll go keep the most powerful golden sword beast busy. I'll leave the rest to you. Time was of the essence, and there was no time to make any extra arrangements. With that, Yi Jian Pain left the spatial battleship and engaged in an intense battle with the most powerful golden sword beast in outer space. Immediately, rumbles rang out in space. The entire region distorted as powerful sword chi enveloped the entire battlefield. As the sword chi rampaged, it left behind cracks in space. Yi Jian Pain comprehended the laws of the sword. Not only was his cultivation the highest on the spatial battleship, but he also possessed the most terrifying battle prowess. Yi Jian Pain fought a golden sword beast that was 3,000 meters long. It shone with golden light like a huge flying sword, constantly stabbing towards Yi Jian Pain as a streak of light. It moved extremely quickly. At the same time, the 5 other primordial realm experts of the Float Empire all charged out of the spatial battleship. They each kept a primordial realm golden sword beast busy. Only Jianshin and 2 other first heavenly layer infinite primes remained on the spatial battleship now. Jianshin remained the same as before, while the 2 other infinite primes were stern as if they were about to face a great enemy. Jianshin, the primordial realm golden sword beasts are covered in treasures. They're worth quite a lot. Don't forget to collect their corpses. Kea reminded Jianshin. She had spent a lot of time with Jianshin and had fought by his side many times. She basically understood Jianshin's strength extremely well, so she did not worry for Jianshin at all. Brother, don't be greedy for the corpses of the golden sword beasts. These golden sword beasts are very powerful. Even primordial realm experts can die if you're careless. Surviving is the most important thing. At this moment, the middle-aged man said to Jianchen. With that, he charged into outer space and began fighting the weakest primordial realm golden sword beast. In the end, the extraordinarily handsome young man glanced at Jianchen indifferently. He said nothing, charging out of the spatial battleship. "Kea, be careful." After warning Kea, Jianchen no longer hesitated. He took a step and charged out of the spatial battleship through the crack in the formation, arriving on the battlefield in outer space. The 8 primordial realm experts on the spatial battleship kept 8 golden sword beasts busy. Aside from Giant Pain, who was the strongest, the others avoided direct confrontations with the golden sword beasts. Instead, they engaged in battles. Giant Pain engaged in a battle to the death with the 9th heavenly layer Infinite Prime golden sword beast. It was extremely intense. There are 4 primordial realm golden sword beasts left. 2 of them are 2nd heavenly layer Infinite Primes. 1 is 3rd heavenly layer and 1 is 6th heavenly layer. Jianchen glanced past the 4 other golden sword beasts. At this moment, the 4 golden sword beasts continued to attack the spatial battleship wildly. They were not intelligent, so they did not know how to adapt. They only knew how to attack the formations of the spatial battleship according to their leader's orders. Even when cultivators passed by them, they would ignore them as long as they did not complete their leader's mission. As a result, as long as they were not provoked, their target would always be the spatial battleship. Even though space beasts possessed a great advantage in battle prowess, they also had a fatal weakness of low intelligence. Right at this moment, a strand of powerful sword intent suddenly appeared. The sword intent surged, and it was filled with a supreme aura of the Tao. It was like the ruler of the heavens and the earth had descended. Everywhere it went, everything submitted, and even the supreme laws and order of the heavens and the earth seemed to have undergone a slight change. Jianchen struck out. He shone with resplendent light, and his bearing became ethereal. He was filled with a heavy immortal intent. His will enveloped a range of 100,000 kilometers. Wherever his will passed by, all powers weaker than him would be converted into his way, becoming powers under his control. At that moment, Jianchen truly did feel like he had become the ruler of the world after entering his sword immortal state. This was the ultimate way of the sword he had comprehended. At this moment, he slowly raised his right hand and pointed it at the sky. Immediately, all the godhood golden sword beasts within a range of 100,000 kilometers froze. In the next moment, a series of heavy explosions rang out. All the golden sword beasts within a range of 100,000 kilometers exploded. Their golden limbs and dazzling golden blood turned into a flood of gold, gathering above Jianchen's head. In the end, it formed a huge sword completely condensed from the corpses and blood of the golden sword beasts. Jianchen had slain all the golden sword beasts with his powerful will. Jianchen had comprehended the ultimate way of the sword. Wherever he was the ruler who controlled the life and death of all living things. His will turned into the rules of the world and formed his own domain. All existences and powers weaker than him were under his control. Their life and death were in his hands. P.S. Xiaoyao had always used the little darkroom to write, but last night Xiaoyao opened the little darkroom software as usual. He was instantly dumbfounded. In the little darkroom, all the manuscripts that Xiaoyao had written were gone. The entire software was empty. Although Xiaoyao didn't have any manuscripts saved, and all the manuscripts in the little darkroom software had been updated. Even if they were lost, he wouldn't lose anything. However, many of the important notes from earlier plots were gone. Thus, Xiaoyao went to look for them, but he couldn't find them after a long time. The software's cloud synchronization function kept failing. It was miserable. During the day, Xiaoyao went to look for those important notes again. Of course, Xiaoyao wouldn't miss any new chapters. Also, please follow Xiaoyao's WeChat public account. Xiaoyao will release updates on the public account. This will make it convenient for everyone to know the latest updates of the book and avoid waiting too long. He opened WeChat and searched. Xingxingxiao 110. Chapter 2469. In the blink of an eye, the region of 100,000 kilometers around Jianqin had become empty. All the golden sword beasts had vanished. Under the control of Jiqiang's will, they all gathered above Jianqin's head, condensing into an extremely huge sword that shone with resplendent, golden light. This was the first time Jianqin had truly fought since he comprehended the ultimate way of the sword and became a sword immortal. As soon as he struck out, his might shook up the surroundings, creating a terrifying sight. The primordial realm experts who were entangled with the golden sword beasts in the surroundings all glanced over. They were all shocked. What powerful sword intent! What is this ability? It's actually so shockingly powerful. Jianpain, who fought the 9th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast, also noticed the disturbance on Jianqin's side. When he saw the huge sword condensed from the corpses of the golden sword beasts above Jianqin's head, he was no longer able to maintain his composure. This was because even he was unable to create such a grand sight. He actually killed so many golden sword beasts in the blink of an eye. What secret technique is this? He hid in the high cabin. Originally, I thought he was just a regular primordial realm expert, but I never thought he would be so powerful. The 5 other primordial realm experts of the Float Empire were shocked as well. Even though the godhood golden sword beasts that Jianqin killed were nothing to them, it was rather terrifying that he could kill so many godhood golden sword beasts in a single instance. I'm probably not this person's opponent. I don't think I've offended him in the past, right? Fei Yin looked at Jianqin, who stood in the air like a god. He was filled with fear. Suddenly, white light shone brightly as sharp sword qi swept through the surroundings. The huge sword condensed from the corpses of the golden sword beasts above Jianqin's head suddenly shone with dazzling light. This light was so strong that it illuminated the void, as if it had become a blazing sun in the vast starry sky. The huge sword suddenly swung down with powerful sword qi. Its target was a 2nd Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast that was attacking the spatial battleship. Even though the 2nd Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast was not very intelligent, it instinctively sensed danger. It immediately stopped attacking the spatial battleship and turned around. It turned into a streak of golden light and shot towards Jianqin. It moved extremely quickly, vanishing with a flash. However, no matter how fast it moved, it was unable to dodge Jianqin's attack. Jianqin had already locked onto it as well. Unless it was more powerful than Jianqin, it would not be able to dodge Jianqin's attack. Boom! The sword condensed from the flesh of many golden sword beasts struck the 2nd Heavenly Layer Primordial Realm Golden Sword Beast with resplendent light, immediately producing a heavy thud. The 2nd Heavenly Layer Golden Sword Beast was sent flying by a single strike. A deep slash appeared on its huge body as golden liquid flowed out. Even though the 2nd Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast did not die, it was heavily injured from Jianqin's attack. Its light dimmed. Jianqin heavily injured a 2nd Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime with just a single clash. It was an extremely difficult golden sword beast with extremely tough defenses. Jianqin took a step and shot through space in pursuit. His will enveloped the surroundings, and wherever it passed, all the godhood golden sword beasts within a range of 100,000 kilometers would explode. They had been slain by his will. With a few flashes, Jianqin arrived before the heavily injured golden sword beast. He extended his hand, and light surged from his hand as he pressed it gently against the golden sword beast's huge body. Immediately, the 2nd Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast trembled violently. The supreme power of the way of the sword constantly seeped into its body from Jianqin's hand, destroying it from the inside. The golden sword beast struggled violently, but no matter how it struggled, it was unable to break free from Jianshin's hand. Its wounds became heavier and heavier as its life force flowed away rapidly. It became weaker and weaker. Finally, after a few seconds, the golden sword beast stopped struggling. It lay there silently without moving at all. Its consciousness had been wiped out by Jianshin. It was equivalent to the shattering of a cultivator's soul. It was completely dead. How is this possible? He actually killed a second Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword beast so quickly. How is he so terrifying? All the Primordial Realm experts paid close attention to everything that happened on the battlefield. Naturally, they saw how Jianshin killed the Golden Sword beast. They were all shocked, and they were unable to remain calm. I can sense that he's not much more powerful than the Golden Sword beast. The second Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword beast was unable to put up any resistance at all. It looks like this person's origins are anything but simple. It's extremely likely that he comes from an ancient organization. The strongest person, Jianpain, glanced at Jianshin deeply. At that moment, Jianshin instead became mysterious in his eyes. Whether it was Jianshin's way of the sword or battle prowess, they were both extremely shocking. Neither of them could be possessed by regular Primordial Realm experts. So naturally, Jianpain began to doubt Jianshin's origins. In another region of outer space, the black-robed spectral elder from the Darkness clan used a secret technique to hide his presence and movements. He seemed to have fused with the darkness of outer space, preventing anyone from discovering his existence. He stared at Jianshin in the distance, very indifferently like a mortal. He secretly paid attention to Jianshin's every move, waiting for an opportunity to assassinate him. This person is extremely powerful. He's definitely not as simple as a new Primordial Realm expert, like I imagined him to be. He probably has quite the background. Should I kill him or not? The spectral elder thought. Originally, he had already given the order to kill Jianshin. After all, regular Primordial Realm experts were nothing in his eyes. However, after witnessing the strength Jianshin displayed when he killed the second Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword beast, he instead became hesitant. Their Darkness clan rarely clashed with people in an open battle. What they were truly skilled at was assassination. They could deliver a fatal blow when people were unprepared, and they would often be able to kill off opponents more powerful than them. As a result, the spectral elder did not fear Jianshin. What truly made him hesitate was Jianshin's identity and origins. He was afraid that he would offend a large organization that he could not afford to offend, which would lead to trouble for the clan. If there were great treasures or great benefits, he could take the risk and strike out decisively. However, this matter had only arisen because of a low-quality god artifact and Anya Gio's impulsiveness. The spectral elder could not help but reconsider. Jianshin had already begun collecting the corpses of the Golden Sword beasts. He didn't care about the wealth of the godhood Golden Sword beast, because it wasn't that valuable to him anymore. However, he had to pay attention to the second Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime beast before him. The corpse of a Golden Sword beast was a treasure. Its flesh could be used as the best material for forging artifacts. Even some formations required some parts of its body. Its blood was also one of the most important materials needed for alchemy, and it also had many other uses. As a matter of fact, if the complete corpse of a Golden Sword beast was given to an artifact forging master, the entire corpse could be refined into a powerful weapon. If the second Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword beast was refined into a weapon, it would definitely be a god artifact. As a result, the corpse of the Golden Sword beast was quite the sum of 5-colored divine crystals in Jianshin's eyes. P.S. Xiaoyao owes a total of 8 chapters. Xiaoyao will slowly make up for the 8 chapters. Moreover, Xiaoyao has posted many images of characters in the book on his official WeChat account. To those who want to take a look, please follow Xiaoyao's official WeChat account, XingXingCiao110. Pinyin was the pen name of Xinqing Xiaoyao. It also had a number for the police, or you could find it by searching for Xinqing Xiaoyao on the official account. For those who do not know how to follow official accounts, you can open the contact list of your official account. You will see the menu for official accounts. You can click on it, click on the plus sign in the upper right corner, and then directly search for the official account. Xiaoyao had already posted many images of characters on his official account. Replying to XN would bring up the image of the first majesty of the heavenly palace of Bixing. XN. Replying to Mo Tianyin would reveal the Emperorian demon lord's true appearance. There were even more images of characters, and they were all in historical information. For those who do not know how to find historical information, you can just reply to historical information. Chapter 2470. With a wave of his hand, the corpse of the second heavenly layer, Infinite Prime, vanished into space. Jianqin had stowed it away in his space ring. Afterwards, he did not stop at all. He struck out again, and it was also the weakest second heavenly layer, Infinite Prime, Golden Sword Beast. Killing the weakest Golden Sword Beast was relatively easier for him. If he had chosen the stronger third heavenly layer, Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast, he would have been able to kill it as well, but it would have taken him a little longer. As a result, he specifically targeted the weaker Golden Sword Beasts. He only wanted to kill them as quickly as possible so that he could turn their corpses into his wealth. Even though the corpse of a second heavenly layer Infinite Prime is worth less than a god artifact, it should be worth over 1,000 five-colored divine crystals at the very least, Jianqin thought. Killing intent shone from his eyes as sword qi surged from him. He had already begun fighting the second heavenly layer, Infinite Prime, Golden Sword Beast. At the same time, the formations on the spatial battleship were ripped open. All the godhood Golden Sword Beasts turned into a golden flood, surging into the spatial battleship wildly. The many divine king experts on the spatial battleship all came out to face the Golden Sword Beasts. They stopped the Golden Sword Beasts on the deck. At that moment, red and golden blood mixed together, covering the entire deck. At the same time, the various killing formations on the spatial battleship were activated as well. Many weaker cultivators provided energy to the battleship in their cabins, causing the entire battleship to shine with a resplendent light of formations. There were many godhood Golden Sword Beasts, but they were all ripped to shreds as soon as they came in contact with the killing formations. Their golden blood scattered into the surroundings. The battle between the cultivators and the Golden Sword Beasts had reached its climax. It was no longer just a battle between primordial realm experts. Even those below the primordial realm had entered the battle. The battle had completely erupted. The battle between the primordial realm experts in outer space was the most intense. Half of the primordial realm experts who had charged out of the spatial battleship were injured. Their battle prowess was rather ordinary, so they completely lost the upper hand against the Golden Sword Beasts at the same level of cultivation as them. Even if he were to choose a Golden Sword Beast that was one celestial layer weaker than him, he would only be able to barely gain the upper hand. As for killing it, it was practically impossible. The Golden Sword Beasts had extremely strong defenses. Unless one was much stronger than them or had an extremely powerful attack, it would be very difficult to inflict fatal damage on them. Only Jianping, who had comprehended the laws of the sword, managed to suppress the 9th heavenly layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast with the sharpness and attack of the laws of the sword. He gained the upper hand, slightly. However, that was all. Jianping was still unable to kill the 9th heavenly layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast with his strength. At this time, a strange spiritual wave was transmitted, full of sorrow and pain. The second heavenly layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast had been slain by Jianqin with lightning speed. In just a short while, 2 of the 12 primordial realm Golden Sword Beasts died to Jianqin's hands. The death of the 2nd primordial realm Golden Sword Beast finally angered the ninth heavenly layer, Infinite Prime, Golden Sword Beast. Immediately, it emitted a powerful mental wave that was filled with irritation. Golden Sword Beasts had no limbs, noses, or mouths. They seemed like golden swords. They were a special type of beast that lived in outer space, born naturally under special circumstances. Therefore, their method of communication was carried out through thoughts. The other two golden sword beasts that were at the third and sixth heavenly layer seemed to receive some sort of order when they heard their leader's furious mental wave. They stopped attacking the spatial battleship and turned around, pointing their swords at Jianqin. They charged towards Jianqin with surging killing intent. Jianqin became stern. He did not dare to be careless against a third heavenly layer Infinite Prime and a sixth heavenly layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast at the same time. He immediately became cautious. Fair enough. I'll use you to test my true strength, thought Jianqin. He showed no fear at all. Instead, his battle intent surged. He directly charged towards the two primordial realm golden sword beasts with a surging presence. The will of Jianqin's ultimate way of the sword could only be used against existences weaker than him, such as godhood feral beasts. Even the divine king could be slain with a single thought. However, his will was unable to be of much use against primordial realm feral beasts that were at the same level of cultivation as him. This was because such powerful feral beasts were completely capable of resisting his will. Suddenly, the power of the laws of the sword descended. Two strands of powerful sword qi condensed by Jianqin's left and right. They shot out as streaks of light, piercing through space and colliding with the two primordial realm golden sword beasts loudly. The sword qi possessed his comprehension of the ultimate way of the sword. It was even more powerful than regular sword qi, and its attacks were even more violent. Boom! With a deafening boom, the third heavenly layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast shuddered violently. It was actually forced back by Jianqin's sword qi. The stronger sixth heavenly layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast was not affected at all. It locked onto Jianqin's presence and did not slow down at all. It stabbed towards Jianqin's soul with cold killing intent. Jianqin's face was cold. His gaze was extremely sharp. He swiped his finger across the space there gently, and as his finger passed by, space was immediately ripped open. A long spatial crack appeared. It was as if there was an invisible strand of sword qi hidden at the tip of his finger. It possessed astonishing power. Immediately, Jianqin's finger came in contact with the sixth heavenly layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast. At a closer glance, his finger was still 3 inches away from the Golden Sword Beast. However, this short distance was like a natural chasm that neither side could cross. Immediately, the colossal Golden Sword Beast froze 3 inches away from Jianqin's finger. Time seemed to come to a standstill at that moment. However, this pause only lasted for a split second before it was broken. The space between Jianqin's finger and the golden sword beast suddenly distorted and shook as if an extremely terrifying power was brewing. In the end, with a deafening sound, an extremely terrifying storm of energy suddenly erupted from the tiny space. Jianqin was immediately blown away by the storm of energy. His black hair danced wildly from the storm of energy. He immediately protected himself with the light of the sword. He shone with dazzling light as streaks of light enveloped him, blocking the storm of energy. The sixth heavenly layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast was just like Jianqin, constantly retreating from the storm of energy. Chapter 2471. The defense of this sixth heavenly layer Golden Sword Beast really is astonishing. It's probably almost on par with a low-quality god artifact. If I didn't use the 9-star Sword of Heavenly Ways and the profound Sword Qi, I probably wouldn't have been able to kill it, Jianqin thought. The finger strike earlier seemed extremely casual, but in reality, it was his full-powered strike. It was his most powerful strike when he only used the laws of the sword. However, he failed to injure the sixth heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast. At the same time, the golden sword beast failed to injure Genshin. What strength! He's actually unscathed when he clashed with a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast, mid-infinite prime. This person is a peak mid-infinite prime at the very least. He might have even reached late infinite prime. Everyone saw how Genshin clashed with the 6th heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast, which immediately made the primordial realm experts from the Float Empire gasp. Their gazes towards Genshin changed drastically. Genshin's ultimate way of the sword was just too powerful. They were unable to estimate Genshin's exact cultivation from the laws of the sword, but just his battle prowess stunned them. With such strength, he was the strongest expert on the spatial battleship below Pain. To another side, the pupils of the spectral elder, who had remained hidden the entire time, narrowed slightly. He was shocked by Genshin's battle prowess. At that moment, he immediately made up his mind despite his hesitation. He gave up on assassinating Genshin. However, just when the spectral elder was about to leave, a great sense of danger suddenly swept over him. His face immediately changed. A resplendent streak of light shot over from behind him with lightning speed, heading straight for him. The sword Qi moved extremely quickly. It shone brightly as it rapidly enlarged in the spectral elder's eyes. The sharp presence had already locked onto the spectral elder. Facing this sword Qi, the spectral elder immediately had the misconception that he could not dodge. Under the lock of this sword Qi, there was no way for him to dodge. He could only take it head-on. Moreover, the thing that shocked the ghost elder the most was that before the sword Qi arrived, it had already affected the space around him. It caused the space around him to become a domain of sword Qi in an instant. The formless sword Qi seemed to be everywhere, filling up every inch of space around him. Even the origin power in the starry sky seemed to have been forcibly changed into formless sword intent. It seemed that as long as he moved, he would immediately be attacked by the invisible sword Qi around him. What a powerful sword intent! The spectral elder's heart trembled as his expression became extremely solemn. A black sword instantly appeared in his hand, turning into a black streak of light as it silently stabbed towards the incoming sword Qi. The black sword was a low-quality god artifact. The spectral elder was a primordial realm expert from the Darkness clan that ranked in the top 3 on the Jade Fluid Plane. His background was great, so he naturally possessed a god artifact. However, this divine artifact's aura was completely restrained. It didn't emit a single trace of it. It seemed to have completely blended into the darkness. When it pierced out, it was silent and difficult to detect. Boom! With a heavy rumble, the spectral elder's god artifact collided with the incoming sword Qi. He was immediately forced out of the darkness, revealing himself in outer space. The sword Qi was extremely powerful. Even with the spectral elder's god artifact, he could not help but retreat after clashing with it. You can actually sense my existence. The spectral elder no longer hid himself. He hovered in outer space as he stared at Genshin sternly in the distance. His heart was in turmoil. Not only could his concealment technique allow him to completely blend into outer space, but it could also conceal all traces and presences. Even opponents with higher cultivation than him would struggle to sense his existence. However, his concealment technique had actually been exposed before Genshin. Moreover, it had been exposed from so far away. This left him extremely shocked. Genshin looked at the spectral elder and said, "You've been secretly observing me for so long. Was it just to watch my battle against the golden sword beasts?" The spectral elder was shocked when he heard that. Disbelief filled his face as he cried out, "You actually knew about my existence long ago." Genshin took a step forward and crossed through outer space, arriving before the spectral elder in a single instant. He said emotionlessly, "You've been following me sneakily. It looks like your Darkness clan wants to do something to me." With that, Jianshin's eyes gradually turned cold. He said coldly, "However, this is not the Jade Fluid Plane. Your Darkness clan can do whatever you want here. But in outer space, it's not your clan that calls the shots." Light flickered in Jianshin's hand. With that, he directly sent a palm strike towards the spectral elder. The palm strike contained his supreme sword intent. When he struck out, all the power in the surroundings seemed to be under his control, turning into invisible sword chi that was everywhere. The spectral elder's face changed drastically. Faced with Jianshin's palm strike, he felt like he had completely fallen into a domain of sword chi. Endless sword chi enveloped him from all directions, forming a cage that trapped him. Suddenly, the spectral elder bellowed out. The laws of darkness surged from him as the god artifact in his hand shone with dense, black light. He stabbed towards Jianshin as hard as he could. Third heavenly layer, infinite prime. Even with a god artifact, you're not my opponent, Jianshin said coldly. His ultimate way of the sword was just too powerful, allowing him to possess battle prowess that was no weaker than a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime. And this was even without using the 9-star sort of heavenly ways. In his eyes, the spectral elder was naturally not an opponent on the same level. Bang! With a muffled sound, the spectral elder was blown away. His face immediately paled as he vomited a mouthful of blood. Furthermore, there were densely packed sword scars on his body. His body was covered with cuts and bruises, and he was completely covered in blood. These slashes were all caused by the invisible sword chi that enveloped him from all directions within the domain of sword chi. He's actually so terrifying. That bastard, Anya Jianshin. Old man is doomed because of him. The spectral elder was extremely shocked. His gaze towards Jianshin even contained a sliver of fear. He hated Anya Jianshin to the core. Jianshin was just too powerful. In particular, his terrifying way of the sword made him feel powerless even with a god artifact. He was unable to fend him off. After all, a god artifact could only increase his battle prowess by 1 heavenly layer at most, giving him the strength to fight against 4th heavenly layer infinite primes. Against Jianshin, who was no weaker than a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime, the difference was still extremely great. This is only a small lesson. If this happens again, don't blame me for being merciless. Go deal with the golden sword beasts. Jianshin called out. He did not continue to attack the spectral elder. He turned around and charged towards the 6th heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast. The spectral elder stared at Jianshin's back with mixed feelings. After calming himself down, he charged towards the golden sword beasts as well, working together with a subject of the Float Empire to deal with a golden armored beast. However, he maintained a relatively great distance from Jianshin. Clearly, he still feared Jianshin very deeply. P.S. Xiaoyao has posted many pictures of his characters on his public account. To those who want to take a look, please follow Xiaoyao's public account on WeChat, Xinxing Xiaoyao 110. Pinyin is the pseudonym of Xinxing Xiaoyao. There is also a number for the police, or you can directly search for Xinxing Xiaoyao on the public account. To those who do not know how to follow public accounts, you can open the contact list of your public account. You will see the menu for public accounts. You can click it, press the plus sign in the upper right corner, and then directly search for the public account mentioned above. Xiaoyao had already posted many pictures on his public account. If you reply to EXAN, you will see the picture of the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bixing in Exit. If you reply to Motianyan, you will see the Empyrean Demon Lord's true appearance. There are even more pictures of other characters. They are all in historical information. To those who do not know how to find historical information, you can just reply to historical information. Chapter 2472. As for Jianshin, he clashed with the 2/3 heavenly layer and 6th heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beasts once again. Jianqin was unable to kill the 6th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast for now, so he focused his attacks on the slightly weaker 3rd Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast. He showed no mercy, using his full strength in an attempt to end the battle quickly. With his current battle prowess, killing the 3rd Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast was naturally nothing difficult. However, with the interference of the 6th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast, Jianqin encountered a very great obstacle. As a result, he was forced to divert some of his power to repel the 6th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast many times before he could focus on dealing with the 3rd Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast. In the end, Jianqin spent an entire incense stick's worth of time before successfully slaying the 3rd Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast. He stowed the corpse away as soon as possible. Every single corpse of a Golden Sword Beast was extremely valuable. The more powerful they were, the more valuable they were. With the deaths of the 3 Primordial Realm Golden Sword Beasts, the pressure on the spatial battleship decreased drastically. Coupled with the Spectral Elders' participation, the Primordial Realm experts of the Float Empire gradually recovered from their disadvantage against the Primordial Realm Golden Sword Beasts. However, even with that being the case, apart from Jianqin and Jianping, it was very difficult for the other Infinite Primes to gain the upper hand in their battles against the Golden Sword Beasts. The defenses of the Golden Sword Beasts were just too great, and their battle prowess was not weak either. Apart from a few experts with astonishing battle prowess, they were often not the opponent of the Golden Sword Beasts at the same level of cultivation. Even those without God artifacts would struggle to heavily injure the Golden Sword Beasts. As a result, apart from Jianqin, who had slain 3 Golden Sword Beasts with astonishing strength, only 2 of the 9 remaining Golden Sword Beasts were heavily injured. These 2 were the leader of the Golden Sword Beasts that Jianping had fought, and the one that the Spectral Elder and the Float Empire's Reverend were working together against. Jianqin frowned as he stared at the 6th Heavenly Layer Golden Sword Beast that kept him busy. A 6th Heavenly Layer Golden Sword Beast was at least twice as valuable as a 3rd Heavenly Layer Golden Sword Beast. If possible, he really wanted to kill this Golden Sword Beast as well. However, he could not use the 9-star Sword of Heavenly Ways or the Profound Sword Chi at all. The 2 of them had basically become a symbol of his identity. He was certain that as soon as he revealed the 9-star Sword of Heavenly Ways and the Profound Sword Chi, the Primordial Realm experts would immediately see through his identity. If he did not use these 2 techniques, he would not be able to kill a 6th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast with the power of his laws of the sword and chaotic body. At this moment, a dazzling light suddenly appeared. The formations on the spatial battleship began to fuse together, forming an extremely huge hexagram array. An extremely terrifying energy that even shocked Jianqin began to brew within the hexagram array. Jianqin could clearly sense that over 80% of the energy in the spatial battleship was like a raging river. It surged towards the hexagram array in an extremely violent manner, causing the energy within to become more and more powerful. It shone like the sun, illuminating outer space. Without the attacks of the Primordial Realm beasts, the spatial battleship finally possessed enough power to launch its most powerful attack. This is the light of destruction. Jianqin's eyes narrowed. The energy gathered in the hexagram array shocked him. The power of the attack had definitely reached the level of 9th Heavenly Layer Infinite Primes, or even surpassed them. The light of destruction is a terrifying killing formation formed from the combination of many formations. It's the spatial battleship's ultimate trump card, its most powerful attack when traveling through outer space. Every time it's used, it will consume an extremely tremendous amount of resources. It won't be used casually. Jianqin quickly recalled the records regarding the hexagram array. At this moment, the energy in the hexagram array finished charging. An extremely dazzling pillar of light suddenly shot out, shining brightly. At that moment, the entire dark region of outer space was illuminated. Countless stars paled in comparison. The pillar of light that shot out from the hexagram array became the only light in the surroundings. Boom! With a deafening boom, a terrifying storm of energy swept through the surroundings. The pillar of energy from the hexagram array struck the ninth heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast heavily with shocking power that shocked all the primordial realm experts. Immediately, cracks appeared on the ninth heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast. Golden blood flowed out, spraying the air. The light of destruction was just too powerful. It had already surpassed the level of ninth heavenly layer infinite primes. It was completely comparable to a strike from a chaotic prime. Just a single strike had heavily injured the ninth heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast. 9 sword seal the heavens imprison. At this moment, Giant Pain called out. 9 swords shot out from his body and formed a formation, trapping the ninth heavenly layer golden sword beast. Afterwards, he swung the sword in his hand and completely displayed his strength as a ninth heavenly layer infinite prime. He produced strands of powerful sword chi that struck the 8 remaining golden sword beasts. Every single strand of sword chi was extremely powerful. As they tore through the air, they ripped through space. The 6th heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast that Genshin struggled to kill was immediately heavily injured by Giant Pain's sword chi. Golden liquid constantly spurted from its body as it was blown far away. The remaining golden sword beasts were all heavily injured by Giant Pain's sword chi as well. They were blown far away. The primordial realm experts of the Float Empire all riled up. They wanted to pursue the golden sword beasts. Don't get caught up in the battle. Everyone get on the spatial battleship. At this moment, Giant Pain's voice rang out. He did not kill the ninth heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast. Instead, he approached the spatial battleship. He swung his sword and produced strands of sword chi, killing all the godhood golden sword beasts that surrounded the spatial battleship. The infinite primes on the spatial battleship returned to the spatial battleship without any hesitation when they heard that. However, the spatial battleship had already become surrounded by a huge number of golden sword beasts. Hundreds of thousands or even millions of golden sword beasts formed a huge sphere, firmly trapping the spatial battleship. If the infinite primes wanted to return, they naturally had to kill the golden sword beasts and clear out a path. Very soon, all the infinite primes returned to the spatial battleship. Their return immediately caused the battle on the spatial battleship to come to an end. All the golden sword beasts that had charged into the spatial battleship were slain by them. At this moment, Giant Pain looked at Genshin and said sternly, "The golden sword beasts are a very large group. What we encountered right now should only be a small group of them. The deaths of 3 infinite primes will definitely alarm even more experts in the group. We can't stay here for long. We need to leave as soon as possible. Sir, I hope you can clear a path for us." Clearly, Giant Pain valued Genshin's ability to kill so many golden sword beasts in a single moment. Currently, the spatial battleship was completely surrounded by golden sword beasts. As soon as they cleared out a path, even more golden sword beasts would surge over. They could not be killed. Naturally, it would not be a problem for the infinite primes to leave alone. However, it would be extremely difficult for a colossal object like the spatial battleship to break out. This was because the spatial battleship was just too large, so the path they had to clear out was naturally even larger. None of the infinite primes possessed the ability to kill golden sword beasts en masse like Genshin.